Chapter 1652. In order to continue our roots and keep our civilization alive, we can only sacrifice you. I believe that if you are in heaven, you will understand and smile with relief. In the ruins Emperor's palace, Star-Lord Tianhe and the others saw all this through the light screen. Their faces were filled with sorrow as they knelt on the ground, paying the highest respect to the dead. My husband. How magnificent! With billions of blood essence, we nourished the past divine emperors and fought to live on, just so that the troubled wood spirit civilization can survive. Young people like Prince Xiahe, who was not ruthless enough, were grief-stricken and shed tears. Among them were their old friends, loved ones, and even their wives and children. The plan for the blood cocoon imperial array had long been drawn up. Even the royal family, as long as they did not have cultivation, would be treated equally. They would all be turned into blood food to support the divine emperors to recover to their peak state. Boom. Jiang Tian's foot was lifted thousands of feet by the combined force of the divine emperors. With the combined force of many divine emperors, they pushed Jiang Tian out of the city. Impressive. Jiang Tian's face was slightly surprised as he praised. For the sake of the overall benefit, tens of millions of people were sacrificed in an instant. Only with such courage and fortitude could a cultivation dynasty, that had lasted for 10,000 years and never declined. Before the rise and fall of a civilization, ethics and morality, good and evil, were all nonsense. Only survival was the most important thing. Otherwise, if you were completely wiped out without leaving a single trace behind, so what if you were kind and beautiful? You would no longer exist and no one would remember you. Kong Teichu, that's all you've got. Fairy Jade Lotus sneered, full of mockery. So what if he was strong? He was just a lone person from a remote planet with no foundation. How could he shake the ruins of Immortality Dynasty that had existed for 10,000 years and had a deep foundation? It was like an ant trying to shake a tree or an egg trying to hit a rock. This was the power of a dynasty that included grotto heavens, sects, and aristocratic families. Who could match them when they joined forces? Kong Teichu, you can't even do anything to us. You want to make an enemy out of the empire of the immortal ruins? The old ruins emperor has yet to appear and divine emperor Wu Ji has yet to take action. If he did, he would have killed you with a single strike. Celestial Emperor Ba Dao roared. Kong Teichu, you are but an abandoned ant from the abandoned wasteland. Your vision is too shallow. You don't know the vastness of the starry sky, the vastness of the universe, and the greatness of my immortal ruins imperial court. Jingnong godly emperor also sneered. Kong Teichu, kneel down and beg for mercy. If you are sincere in your repentance, then sign a divine soul contract with me. I'll spare your life. Divine Emperor Wu Ji made the final decision and shouted. At this moment, Dako's group of heroes looked at the light screen worriedly. How cruel and vicious. To actually feed on the flesh and blood of tens of thousands of people to raise his cultivation. The past deity emperors have already recovered to their peak state. Senior Tai Chu is in danger. Jiang Tian's feet were blocked by many deity emperors. But in fact, the empire of the immortal ruins still had trump cards that they hadn't used yet. There were still some more ancient and powerful beings who hadn't shown their hand. They sacrificed tens of millions of people to kill His Majesty Tai Chu, which means that what they want to protect is more important than those people and their own lives. Bai Mushua's clear eyes glittered with wisdom. Her face was calm, but there was a thunderous sound in her mind. She took out her Dharma artifact and made a series of hand seals, quickly calculating and calculating. She wanted to see through the fog and get to the truth. She had become more and more resilient, and had already pulled herself away from the sadness of the death of her master, Fairy Ruelong. Many cultivators of the ruins of immortality revealed joyful smiles, as if they had been relieved of a heavy burden, as if they had gotten their revenge. Inside the ruins emperor's palace, many members of the royal family, aristocrats, and ministers were cheering. Jiang Tian, who was pushed out of the city and flew up into the sky, suddenly snorted and mocked. You are just a few ants. You dare to guess my power, and talk with me about the vastness of the universe and the starry sky? You are really ridiculous. Fine, I'll let the empire of the immortal ruins, and all the cultivators and mortals in the immortal ruins see the power of a divine soul. Then, The chaotic 9 orifices divine infant in Jiang Tian's body suddenly opened its eyes and yelled at Jiang Tian, "Thunder slaughter divine law." After a roar, thunder rumbled and a giant thunderbolt was 10 times more powerful than when Jiang Tian released the purple thunder blade. Everyone only saw that the thunder divine laws formed a giant thunder slaughter, heavenly elephant behind Jiang Tian. It roared and stomped on the ground anxiously. A thunder divine law could create countless thunder dragons and thunderclouds. And this thunder slaughter divine beast had more than 10 million thunder divine laws. Its destructive power was almost earth-shattering. Crack! Boom! Lightning flashed, and the sky shook as if it were about to be torn apart. The entire sky above the immortal ruins was chaotic and the stars in the sky were distorted, as if they were about to fall. Seeing this, many divine emperors were startled. They had used the blood slaughter imperial array to devour the blood of others to forcefully increase their power, which went against the laws of nature and was extremely cruel. Even if they had the reason to suppress their inner demons and stabilize their minds, it was still a fact that they had killed millions of their own kind after all. Their minds would inevitably be damaged and their bodies would have many flaws. Thunderbolts, on the other hand, were extremely strong and violent, which could easily destroy unstable bodies. Besides, thunderbolts were powerful and terrifying. When they fought with their minds, they would create great pressure and attack the flaws in people's minds. At this moment, they all felt extremely pressured, as if there were mountains pressing down on them. In an instant, their minds were filled with evil thoughts and they lost their minds. Regret, sadness, guilt, hatred, anger, shame, jealousy, greed. All kinds of negative and dark emotions coiled around their minds like poisonous snakes and gnawed at their minds. The thunder slaughter divine law hadn't really been suppressed yet. It was just releasing its power and the divine emperors had already descended a few hundred feet. But this still wasn't the end. Red bird! Jiang Tian yelled. His nascent soul voice was sharp and loud, like a demon or a god. The divine disc spun and the vermilion bird divine law manifested itself into a giant vermilion bird. It was as if a giant artificial sun had risen above the ruined city. Flames refined the sky and burned the heavens. The terrifying temperature evaporated the sea of blood, turned the rocks and bricks into dust, and even melted metal. The other cultivators in the sky couldn't take it anymore. The golden core cultivators were instantly turned into dried corpses, and the nascent soul cultivators, and soul formation cultivators felt extremely uncomfortable. They all went into cover and activated all kinds of defensive arrays and restrictions. Everyone, we've used the blood of millions of people to forcefully increase our power just to kill Kong Teichu. If we can't do it, we won't be forgiven. We'll forever be in hell and be tortured by the fire of karma. It's time to fight with our lives. Divine Emperor Wu Ji's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets as he roared and shot into the sky. For the wood spirit civilization, for our descendants. Explode. He was extremely ruthless and chose to explode his gods. At that moment, it was as if a sun had risen in the sky under Jiang Tian's feet. Its unparalleled destructive power could move mountains, fill oceans and destroy the moon. Explode! 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 Not only him, but Dao, Jingnong and the other divine emperors shouted at the same time. Endless determination flashed in their eyes as they chose to explode their gods. One person, 2 people, 3 people at that moment, his energy and power were raised to the limit, as if there was no limit. The great Tao of heaven and earth vibrated together, and all kinds of ancient chants sounded. Many cultivators felt that the entire world seemed to become soft and fragile. That was because the essence Qi, Dharma laws and great Tao were being pulled away. 9 gods exploding at the same time was equivalent to 9 void return saints attacking together. It caused a hurricane of Dharma laws and great Tao to collapse. With Jiang Tian as the center, a vortex of Dharma laws and great Tao with a radius of 100 miles formed, and was about to destroy Jiang Tian. The previous divine emperors died at the same time. Many gods exploded at the same time. At that moment, heaven and earth were overturned and the sun and moon were reversed. Too many precepts and fragments of the great Tao were like silk ribbons, waterfalls, rivers, suns and moons, divine beasts and immortal birds. They were rolling, rubbing, and violently colliding. Thousands of changes occurred in an instant, and the world was turned upside down. The power was too terrifying. It actually struck out strands of chaotic aura, tearing apart the primordial chaotic aura of the Source Stone Cauldron and attacking Jiang Tian. In the end, that place was in complete chaos. With the eyesight and divine senses of others, it was impossible to see clearly. Divine Emperors. The previous Divine Emperors are all dead. Rest in peace, Divine Emperors. We will not forget the wishes of the previous Divine Emperors and bring glory to the Wood Spirit Civilization. Ignite the fire seed of the Wood Spirit Civilization on every star and illuminate the entire universe. Many members of the royal family of the Ruins of Immortality were crying for the death of the Divine Emperors, but they also thought that Jiang Tian had died and heaved a sigh of relief. Heavenly Tharch. Heavenly Tharch. Senior Tai Chu. Many of the great bandits' assassins exclaimed in shock and sighed with regret. Sigh, do you think you can kill me by exploding your gods? A sigh came from the vortex of Dharma laws in Great Tao. Chapter 1653. That's Kong Techu's voice. He's not dead yet. At this moment, many cultivators of the ruins of deity were stunned as if they had been struck by lightning. They couldn't believe it. Ocean calming. As Jiang Tian yelled, the terrifying ocean calming divine law was cast and instantly covered the entire sky above the ruins of deity. Vital chi, plants, clouds, and even space were all frozen in place. The whirlpool of precepts and great paths that had been spinning endlessly suddenly became motionless like an abstract painting. Even the falling or rolling bodies of the divine emperors were frozen in place. Their determination, serenity, and even relief before their deaths could still be seen on their severed heads. Tao Tai. Jiang Tian yelled again. Boom. A black Tao Tai that was as strong as a mountain but with a bigger head and mouth appeared. Its eyes were full of greed. It was the manifestation of the Tao Tai divine law. Eat. The Tao Tai shook its head and turned into a giant black hole with an unparalleled swallowing power. It swallowed all the Dharma laws and Tao in a few seconds. Then, it turned into a ray of black light and went into Jiang Tian's divine disk. Great, the divine souls, Dharma laws and Tao of the divine emperors are all mine. More importantly, they also absorbed the blood of tens of millions of people, which is a supreme resource. It's enough for me to reach the fourth level of the nascent soul level. A satisfied expression appeared on Jiang Tian's face as he nodded to himself. No matter how strong Jiang Tian's mind was, it wasn't the Tao of God. He couldn't get rid of all emotions and desires and cut off all karma. Swallowing the blood and lives of tens of millions of people would also cause his Tao heart to become unstable. It could easily lead to an inner demon tribulation and become a stumbling block on Jiang Tian's cultivation path. But after being tormented by the divine emperors, it would be wonderful. Jiang Tian wouldn't have any inner demons at all. After all, he wasn't the one who killed them. He had killed many divine emperors and avenged the poor people of the ruins of deity. Clouds were gloomy in the sky and lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Above the ruins of immortality, the laws wailed and the great Tao trembled. Many deity emperors had fallen. Jiang Tian and the others had devoured too many great Tao laws. The heaven and man connection had caused the heaven and earth to be filled with anger and sorrow. Jiang Tian stood proudly in the sky. His black robe fluttered like a flag, making him look like a demon or a god. It was extremely shocking. He killed all the previous divine emperors by himself. No, to be exact, the deity emperors have already sensed that they are no match for Kong Techu, so they chose to self-destruct and perish together with Kong Techu, but they still failed. At this point, the millions upon millions of cultivators and mortals in the ruins of immortality were all terrified and dumbfounded. Every deity emperor of the past was extremely talented and had a powerful cultivation base. Every single one of them worked hard to govern the country, and they were skilled in both civil and martial arts. They had made illustrious contributions, and their names were known throughout the ages. The Emperor's Majesty soared to the heavens and destroyed the earth. The imperial power was unparalleled. All the previous deity emperors were attacking Jiang Tian. What a grand lineup! It could be said that this was a rare sight throughout history. Moreover, they had also borrowed the flesh and blood of tens of millions of people in the ruins of immortality to forcefully raise their cultivation bases and restore them to their peak state. It was equivalent to many deity emperors in their prime crossing time and space to attack Jiang Tian together. The cultivators of the ruins of immortality all thought that Kong Teichu was dead for sure, and were full of confidence. But they never expected this to be the result. How is this possible? Fairy Jade Lotus felt her entire body turn cold, as if she had fallen into an ice cellar. Her face turned snow white, and she could not even stand steadily. Reality was so cruel. This Kong Teichu was simply a legendary immortal. No matter what methods the Empire of the Ruins of Immortality used or what trump cards they used, Kong Teichu would easily resolve them and deal with them. It was as if he would never be defeated. At this moment, she felt that the Jiang Tian she was facing was not on the same level as her at all. The cultivators of the Ruins of Immortality were ants. At this moment, the entire Ruins Emperor's palace was dead silent. Some soft sobbing sounds could be heard. Some people were crying like injured beasts, like frightened and helpless babies, filled with endless misery and despair. It was Chancellor Xian who sob. We lost. 90 million living people, our own kind, became food for blood. We still lost. We lost so miserably. Even the 9 deity emperors together lost. He didn't lie. What he said to the teacher was true. He must be an immortal. We provoked someone we shouldn't have. 10,000 years ago, when we stepped into the ruins of immortality, we were destined to end up like this. Annihilation of the country, the extinction of the race, and the extinction of the race. At this moment, he was lying on the ground, his hair disheveled, and he was shivering. Tears and snot were rolling down his face. His forehead was on the ground, and his hands were clutching his head. He was crying and laughing at the same time. His eyes were glazed over like a mad dog. Is he crazy? Prince Xiahe said with grief and sympathy. He's crazy. Another person nodded with certainty. Chancellor Xian, who was a divine physician of his generation, and was as famous as the divine medicine god. He was kind-hearted and loved life. He loved the wonders of nature. He often left food for rats and didn't light a candle for moths. He couldn't even bear to kill an ant. How serious would it be to see tens of millions of lives being destroyed in an instant? He's crazy. Tianhe Lord's face was cold. He suddenly unleashed a divine power and pointed at Xianhu. Xianhu's 7 orifices were bleeding and he fell to the ground. Everyone was silent. They were already numb to death. Even if Kong Teichu can break the array of the ruins of immortality, how can he be a match for that ancestral patriarch? At this time, the heavenly river star sovereign said softly, "Are you talking about ancestral patriarch Songming?" Prince Xiahe asked in fear. What? Ancestral patriarch Songming isn't dead? Some noble plain cultivators exclaimed in disbelief. Ancestral patriarch Songming was an overlord who had followed the Emperor of Ruins to conquer the world. He had once been invincible and defeated thousands of soldiers and horses. His strength was earth-shattering and earth-shattering. In a word, his status was much higher than that of teacher Yu Sheng, sword god, and Tianhe Lord. Otherwise, given Tianhe Lord's noble status, why would he call him ancestral patriarch? However, many people said that they couldn't withstand the erosion of time. Their lifespans had dried up, and they had died of old age. Are we going to revive the ancestral general this time? Prince Xiahe's voice trembled. He was extremely excited. A member of the royal family looked at the nobles who didn't know the inside story and explained softly, "This is a top secret. This is a top secret. Ordinary people don't know about Dynasty's trump card. Ancestral patriarch Songming isn't really dead. It's just that his lifespan is almost up, and he can't use his dermic power easily. It's sealed in the divine source as the final foundation. It was originally used to deal with the cultivators from other planets when the world was in danger. Now I'm afraid we have to break out of the seal. There's no other way. Kong Teichu is too vicious. We have to bet everything. This is our last trump card." Tianhe Lord heaved a long sigh, but his eyes were filled with endless determination. At this moment, he faced the north of the city, where the wood spirit's ancestral peak was. He kowtowed and shouted, "Ancestral patriarch, please come out. The world is about to be destroyed." As soon as he finished, boom, an unimaginable energy shot to the sky. The entire ruins capital and even half of the ruins of deity trembled. Ancestral Patriarch? Which ancestral patriarch is it? How can a lord call him ancestral patriarch? Countless cultivators in the entire ruins of deity, whether they were nascent soul, golden core or soul formation cultivators, knelt on the ground in confusion and shock. That's? Everyone was astonished, and they all looked over. Boom. The wood spirit's ancestral peak was more than 10,000 feet tall with layers of green. It was like a lonely peak piercing the sky. Suddenly, there was an explosion of light that lit up the sky. Even the stars in the sky were dim. Countless Tao laws were rumbling and trembling. Many pieces of the grand Tao floated up and down like diamonds and gold. They were crystal clear and glittered like stars. Countless runes and talisman arrays seemed to have been activated and let out beams of light. The immortal palaces and divine watchtowers were all releasing auspicious splendor, taking in and sending out multicolored light. It was as if they had awakened, welcoming their masters. Could it be the old ruins emperor? Countless cultivators and mortals stared at the light screen in awe. Or the previous generations of the ruins emperor. Some even suspected that it was an old monster from the era of the wood spirit planet, or the era of the tyrant emperor. How high was the status of the Sky River Lord? He was one of the 3 giants who could be on par with the teacher and the sword god. Even the previous generations of divine emperors obeyed him, because he had assisted them in the past. Obviously, ordinary seniors weren't enough to be called ancestral patriarch by the Sky River Lord. Even if it's not the old ruins emperor, it's his peer or even his predecessor. At this moment, the atmosphere in the fallen deity sea was extremely tense. Yun Zhongzi's face was extremely serious as he spoke slowly. This ancestral patriarch's aura was too terrifying when he appeared. At this moment, many dragon veins spat out spirit chi like a long river or a waterfall, surging towards the ruins emperor's palace and the wood spirit's ancestral peak. The 9 dragon veins trembled and roared. There were even dragon roars from the ancient times, as if 9 dragons had come back to life and were guarding a pearl. Ha! Could it be an old monster at the half-step void return realm? Jiang Tian was a little surprised. Jiang Tian had studied the spirit chi in the ruins of immortality. It was too thin. Even if he drained the pond, he couldn't find a void return realm saint. That meant that the ruins emperor's cultivation was likely to stop at the soul formation realm. However, even if the old ruins emperor came back to life, Jiang Tian wasn't afraid at all. Although he had only been in seclusion for 7 days, he had already reached the 3rd level of the nascent soul realm. With absolute heaven sword, he had cultivated several supreme divine powers. Those trump cards were prepared for the void return realm. Using those supreme divine powers would certainly deplete his life force, and even reduce his lifespan. However, he couldn't care less because of the urgency of the matter. Even if it's a void return realm old monster, I'll slay him with my sword. Jiang Tian's eyes were resolute and his face was as cold as steel. Boom. An aura like that of a primordial beast erupted on the wood spirit's ancestral peak. It started from the nascent soul realm, broke through the late-stage nascent soul realm, peak-stage nascent soul realm, and reached the soul formation realm. It continued to rise as if there was no end to it. Just as Jiang Tian was waiting with a frown, the aura suddenly disappeared. Crack. At the peak of the wood spirit ancestral peak, the ancient door opened, and a figure that was completely enveloped in pitch black and icy cold armor that even covered his face walked out from within. He wore a cloak that was scarlet red like blood, and he wore bronze boots that were mottled with rust. He carried a ghastly aura of death and filth, and he seemed like a ghost general that had walked out from hell. Chapter 1654. Dong. The ancestral patriarch walked forward step by step. His bronze boots didn't make a loud sound when he stepped on the rocks, but every cultivator's heart was pounding. His might was monstrous. His armor was dark and deep, and a mask with complicated patterns covered his face. Only his scarlet eyes could be seen. His gaze was cruel and cold, and his silver hair fluttered in the wind. On his withered hands, his fingernails were long and curved, like peerless heavenly hooks. His silver hair fluttered even though there was no wind. He glanced down and said coldly, "My name is Tsangming. I am the old ruins emperor, Zhu Tian's uncle and master." "Who are you?" Who woke me up? Every word he spat out was like metal falling to the ground, sonorous and sharp. His voice seemed to have come from the depths of hell, making everyone's hearts tremble and chills run down their spines. It's Divine General Tsangming. Someone who was at the level of a living fossil suddenly realized what was going on. His face was filled with shock as he couldn't help but shout. It's him. He's still alive. The other cultivators were all shocked and their expressions changed drastically. In the history of the ruins of immortality, this person's name could be said to have shocked the ancient and dazzled the contemporaries, leaving behind a thick stroke of ink and color. Legend had it that Tsangming was an elite when the overlord of planet Wood Spirit was still alive. He formed a golden core at a record-breaking speed, and was regarded highly by the overlord, who gave him an important position. When planet Wood Spirit was swallowed by the third planet, Tsangming drove many space cities and battleships to hide behind planets, and sailed to the second planet system in the South Gate. It was said that during the era of Space City, Tsangming had piloted his space battleship many times to burn and loot the ferocious beasts that passed by to replenish Space City. It could be said that he had survived hundreds of battles, and was extraordinarily valiant. He had even trained the Old Ruins Emperor Zhu Tian. During the battle between the descendants of planet Wood Spirit and the natives of the deity ground, he helped the Old Ruins Emperor to conquer the ruins of deity, the desert, the fertile land, Hylon and many other planets. Any planet, any world, would tremble at the mere mention of its name. He was extremely cruel and bloodthirsty. His hands were stained with the blood of the natives of the deity ground, and he was known as the Executioner. He had already become a soul formation cultivator, and was not far from the void return level. If it weren't for the limited spirit chi in the ruins of deity and the destruction of planet Wood Spirit, he would have reached the void return level already. It's Tsangming. Rumor has it that he fell in battle. How could he suddenly appear? Niu Duotian, Yin Zhongzi, and the other big bandits were shocked and terrified. It wasn't that he was afraid of death. Rather, he was worried for Jiang Tian. It was just that this development was too unexpected. It could be said that even if the Old Ruins Emperor were to appear, they would not be so shocked and terrified. This was because Divine General Tsangming was simply too powerful. During the Dao Damage era, he had fought the first half of the invasion by the descendants of the Wood Spirit Star. Back then, the Old Ruins Emperor had even had to listen to his orders. However, as his lifespan grew old and the Old Ruins Emperor Zhu Tian grew up, he abdicated. This was an existence that had existed for tens of thousands of years. He had suppressed the Tyrant Emperor era, the Dao Damage era, and the Ruins Emperor era. His talent and strength were definitely not inferior to the Old Ruins Emperor Zhu Tian. His vast dermic powers were also extremely powerful, striking fear into the hearts of others. Your Majesty, absolute beginning retreat. At that moment, Yin Zhongzi could no longer maintain his calm and leisurely demeanor as he cried out in fear, not caring about his image. Only a descendant of the divine general of the previous heavenly court like him, who had thoroughly studied the history of the ruins of immortality, knew how terrifying Tsangming was in history, and what kind of danger Jiang Tian was facing. I'm afraid it's too late. Niu Duotian's eyes were filled with despair while Tu Fei clenched his fists. The moment Tsangming appeared, they knew that Jiang Tian was truly in danger this time. Tsangming had hidden himself deep within the Wood Spirit Ancestral Mountain for tens of thousands of years. Once he appeared, he would definitely pay a heavy price. He might even die. And now, he would also know that he was facing the double crisis of the expansion of the third star, and Jiang Tian's new heavenly court. With this mentality of certain death, he would kill Jiang Tian and rid his race of all future troubles. Fairy Jade Lotus flew out, and used her immortal will to tell him about all the major changes. Then she knelt down and said with tears in her eyes, I'm the personal disciple of the headmaster of the academy. I'm Jade Lotus, an unworthy junior. I beg the ancestral patriarch to suppress this monster, and bring peace to the ruins of immortality, washing away the hatred and humiliation of our dynasty. Boom. When Fairy Jade Lotus finished speaking, Tsangming suddenly looked up. His silver hair flowed backward like a waterfall, and his red eyes burst out with flames and thunderbolts, burning down the space with crackling sounds. A monstrous murderous intent instantly enveloped the entire ruins of immortality, suppressing even the smell of blood from the deaths of tens of thousands of people. He hadn't spoken yet, but his soul energy alone made all the cultivators of the ruins of immortality feel a chill in their hearts, as if they were enveloped by a fierce god. A native of the deity land. After being defeated, how dare you disturb my sleep, mess up my great country and offend the dignity of our dynasty? Did you eat a dragon's heart or a Chilan skull? How dare you kill my civilians, destroy my cities and slaughter my cultivators? Every word of Songming's was like a heavy hammer hitting everyone's hearts, making them feel heavy and oppressed, making them feel very uncomfortable. He looked Jiang Tian up and down a few times, the corners of his mouth forming an extremely mocking smile as he sneered. You're just a nascent soul cultivator, but your body is quite strong. No wonder you could kill kids like Teacher and Sword God. But that's all there is to it. Your divine power, on the other hand, is not only domineering but also very tough. Your technique seems to be even more powerful than the teachings of the ancient heavenly court of the previous dynasty. Are you an alien cultivator? An alien cultivator? Everyone was confused. Many people were shocked. Sky River Star Lord even blurted out, Senior Songming, I'm the Palace Lord of Sky Palace, Sky River Star Lord. Could it be that the Autorium Senior spoke of as referring to the star that Jiang Taichu came from? No, his teachings are even better than Sword God's, Songming said in a low voice. His technique should come from the legendary Central Galaxy. It's vast and has an ancient aura. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was shocked. Jade Lotus Fairy couldn't believe it. She said, Ancestral Patriarch, you must be mistaken. We've already found out his identity. He's Kong Taichu from Ancient Earth, also known as Planet East. Is that true? Songming looked at Jiang Tian in disbelief. Jiang Tian didn't need to hide it. He said calmly, yes. That's so strange. Songming was confused. He sighed and said, Planet East is a planet abandoned by the ancient heavenly court. The creatures on it are all abandoned people. They're as uncivilized as pigs and dogs, as weak and pitiful as insects. How could such a powerful being be born? He sneered and said, but one thing is for sure. We destroyed the ancient heavenly court, washed the deity ground with blood, and killed their talents. 80,000 years ago, there was Sheng Huangzhong Li. 20,000 years ago, there was Ao Huang. Now there's Kong Taichu. Our only regret is that we weren't ruthless enough back then. We should have occupied the ruins of deity while pushing our way to Planet East to eliminate the source of trouble. Otherwise, you wouldn't have appeared out of nowhere and taken revenge. Songming shook his head as if it were a pity. Unfortunately, you won't have the chance. Earth is destined to fail as long as I'm around. Jiang Tian shook his head and said coldly, Aunt, it's time for you to surrender and repent. Lowly peasant, you have no idea what kind of powerful being you're facing. Fairy Jade Lotus's celestial bearing was unparalleled. Her figure was exquisite and graceful. Her jade face was delicate and pretty, untainted by a speck of dust. She coldly scolded, high and mighty, no longer showing any fear. It was as if Songming's presence gave her something to rely on and Jiang Tian couldn't do anything to her. Go to hell. Jiang Tian's eyes turned cold. He suddenly made a move and waved his fingers. Kuan Peng Annihilation Blade. Under the Kuan Peng Divine Law, the dimension was split into two. Whoosh. Jade Lotus Fairy was cut in half at the waist. The Kuan Peng Annihilation Dharma stirred wildly. Dazzling divine blood and flesh rain instantly dyed the sky red. Ah! Kong Taichu, how dare you kill me? Jade Lotus Fairy screamed as her divine treasures collapsed. She was cut into pieces. Even her divine soul was ground into powder by countless dharma of sword Tao and dissipated into thin air. The dimension shook and heaven and earth roared again. Rain poured down from the sky above the ruins of deity and thunder exploded. Everyone was dumbfounded and couldn't believe it. This Jiang Taichu was too domineering. He was simply too arrogant. To Jiang Tian, killing Jade Lotus Fairy was of course nothing. After all, he had even killed a powerful being like the headmaster of Academy and the Sword God. After all, he had killed all the previous divine emperors. There was nothing he didn't dare to do. More importantly, he did it in front of Songming. The meaning was completely different. This was completely disregarding Songming as the uncle and master of the old ruins emperor, and a genius who had dominated 3 eras. How could such a person tolerate Jiang Tian's disrespect? You're asking for death, aunt. Sure enough, Songming was enraged. His eyes were almost spitting fire, and a monstrous murderous intent swept out from his body like waves. It shook the sky, dimmed the stars and covered the sun and the moon. Jiang Tian only replied with one word. Fight! The ultimate battle that involved 2 universal civilizations, the ownership of dozens of planets, and even the solar system 4 light years away had begun. Chapter 1655. Boom. The 2 of them tore through space and transformed into 2 streaks of black light. They crossed dozens of kilometers and collided in the blink of an eye. Songming's cultivation base was close to the half-step void return realm. However, he had yet to cross that threshold, and his lifespan was already depleted. Previously, he had used techniques such as condensing his blood and sealing his lifespan in a mystical crystal to barely maintain his life force. Although his aura surged and his terrifying dermic powers surged, Jiang Tian could clearly sense the thick aura of death emanating from his body. The stench of decay was several times stronger than that of the previous divine emperors. Right now, he could be considered half human and half corpse. In other words, he was a living dead. This technique that forcibly extended one's lifespan could not be interrupted easily. Once it was interrupted, one would not be able to enter a dormant state again. The combat strength that he was displaying now was like the final radiance of a dying man. After this battle, what awaited him would be death. Songming was clearly aware of this as well. Thus, he used his full strength and held nothing back. He wanted to kill Jiang Tian and unleash his final glory. He wanted to destroy this calamity and bring peace to his descendants. Rip. A golden spear mysteriously appeared in Songming's hand. This spear was engraved with countless Tao patterns and talisman arrays. The patterns were complex. There were flowers, birds, insects, fish, ferocious beasts and birds. There were also images of ancient people working and divine beings running amok. It was all-encompassing and seemed to contain the great Tao of an entire world. At the same time, countless chains formed from the great Tao of nomological laws wrapped around the spear handle. This made the spear appear even heavier and heavier, as if it could affect the entire world. These chains extended into the depths of the void, and seemed to be connected to the entire galaxy. The spear pierced forward violently. It was sharp and incisive. Heaven and earth rumbled as the power of the entire world seemed to converge on this spear. A true holy weapon. Jiang Tian's eyes narrowed. A so-called holy weapon could contain all the nomological laws of a world, or a complete great Tao. As long as one could activate it, one could control the corresponding nomological power of that world. Its power was boundless. For example, the sword god's so-called holy weapon, the flying immortal sword, was actually not a true holy weapon. It only contained a segment of the great Tao. It was incomplete, and its power was limited. The golden spear in Songming's hand was a true Dharma treasure used by void return cultivators in the universe. It was far superior to the so-called Tao artifacts and true artifacts in the ruins of immortality. Jiang Tian instantly came to the conclusion that this magical item didn't come from the ruins of immortality era. This was because even the spiritual qi in the ruins of immortality was unable to nourish such a sacred weapon. This should be a weapon from the era of the wood spirit planet, where the cultivation civilization was even more prosperous. Today, you should feel honored to die under the tyrannical golden spear bestowed by the tyrannical emperor of the wood spirit dynasty. Songming roared. His killing intent was dense. His spear drew upon the great Tao laws of the ruins of immortality. Boundless power condensed into a single strike that could destroy the heavens and extinguish the earth. Kill. Jiang Tian didn't hold back either. Inside his spirit embryo, his nascent soul roared towards the sky. The primal chaos divine disk behind him spun rapidly, shining brightly like a star. The blood qi in his body boiled and his divine body flashed, releasing thousands of rays of light. Countless gems and diamond-like spots could be seen through the surface of his body. He threw a punch. The divine laws of the primal chaos filled the sky and were extremely powerful. Can you resist the power of an entire world? Song Ming roared with a mocking tone and his golden spear shook. At that moment, the 3,000 great Tao and endless Dharma laws seemed to have been extracted from the ruins of immortality and gathered at the tip of the Song Ming spear. A world appeared with a single strike. Then, a complete star of the ruins of immortality appeared. This star had a radius of 10 miles and was overflowing with essence chi. Mountains and rivers could be seen on it, and every blade of grass and tree could be seen clearly. The birds and beasts looked extremely lifelike as they pressed down on Jiang Tian with a thunderous momentum, extracting the Dharma laws and great Tao of a planet and gathering them into a world with the power of an entire world to form a world-destroying attack. This is really the work of a god. At that moment, the entire ruins of immortality was in an uproar. Prince Xiahe was so excited that his body trembled, and he knelt on the ground. Countless members of the royal family and nobles shouted, "Long live the ancestral patriarch!" Indeed, Dharma laws and Dharma laws were the root and foundation of a world. They were extremely solid and indestructible. Soul formation cultivators were so powerful that they could move mountains, fill oceans and form rivers. The outstanding ones could even refine planets and shatter moons. And yet, those soul formation cultivators still couldn't go beyond this planet. After he died, he still had to return to the heavens and return everything to this world. How many soul formation cultivators had been born on this planet in the history? There were countless of them. It could be said that the power of a planet was comparable to that of millions of soul formation cultivators. And then, the extremely powerful planet of the ruins of immortality had been extracted by a grand divine power and condensed into a shape to attack. How terrifying was that? It seemed to be able to annihilate everything. Even if only 1/10,000th of it was extracted, it would be extremely terrifying. It could injure a void return cultivator and kill a soul formation cultivator as easily as killing a dog. With ancestral patriarch Song Ming here, the ruins of immortality will be safe. Even the heavenly river star sovereign relaxed at this moment. Kong Taichu wouldn't be able to withstand that last trump card. Be careful, Senior Taichu. Heavenly Varch. At this moment, the warriors standing on Jiang Tian's side were so nervous that their scalps went numb and their hearts were about to explode. Long Xingnan and Bai Mushua's beautiful faces turned pale. Their beautiful eyes were filled with worry, and they were filled with tears. Then, in the sky, the vast and majestic silhouette of the ruins of immortality was like a continent pressing down, soaring into the sky and smashing down fiercely towards Jiang Tian. With a clang, it smashed onto Jiang Tian's body. Such a vast power could destroy the world. Jiang Tian's body was smashed to the point that it cracked. Terrifying cracks appeared on his body. He even opened his mouth and spurted out a mouthful of blood. Even the stone cauldron flew to the side. Then, the illusory image of the ruins of immortality erupted with countless laws. The laws of flame burned. The laws of the mortal world interfered with his mind, and the laws of thunder exploded in the clouds, sending out arcs of lightning that firmly wrapped around Jiang Tian like an octopus protecting its prey. Jiang Tian was severely injured in one move. Jiang Tian's chaotic divine body was only at the early stage, and it wasn't comparable to the power of the stars. Controlling or matching a planet with life was the power of a void-returning saint. How terrifying! How terrifying! Yin Zhongzi looked serious and his eyes were full of worry. Song Ming was indeed a soul formation cultivator and hadn't reached the void-returning level. But the problem was that he had been at the soul formation level for too long. His foundation was extremely solid and his understanding of the Dharma laws had reached an unprecedented level. He could be said to be the peak of the peak and the ultimate of the Dharma laws. That was why he could use a real sacred weapon and mobilize the Dharma laws and Dharma laws of the entire ruins of immortality. I'm going to kill this old coffin ladle. Tian Shu, who had a sharp mouth and a monkey's cheeks, was also furious after drinking. He waved his saber and said that he would fight Song Ming to the death. The battle might be over by the time you get there. Bai Mushua tried to persuade him gently while holding back her grief and anxiety. In fact, no one could help in a battle of this level. They would only be cannon fodder if they went. Kill. Song Ming didn't show any mercy. The golden spear of the Overlord Emperor shone brightly, as if many small suns were rising in the dark night. The miniature ruins of immortality, formed by the Dharma laws and Dharma laws, jumped and fell. It was as if Mars had crashed into Earth. It came crashing down with the force of a thunderbolt, and an aura that could destroy everything. Open! Jiang Tian yelled and waved his right hand. The stone cauldron fell into his hand. He stomped his foot in the air, and the curvature of space appeared to bend. It was as if the invisible space had become material, and was pressed down like a spring. After that, Jiang Tian used the recoil force of the curvature of space to soar into the sky. At this moment, the chaotic stone cauldron suddenly expanded to the size of a small mountain. However, compared to the 3 kilometers tall Jiang Tian, it seemed to be very suitable and harmonious. The expanded chaotic stone cauldron was like a craggy mountain, but one could still see that the cauldron, 2 handles, and 3 legs seemed to contain the truth of Tao that gave birth to 1, 1 gave birth to 2, 2 gave birth to 3, and 3 gave birth to all things. Moreover, it emitted the aura of the beginning of all things. It was full of vitality, as if it could split the world apart and give birth to all things. Chaotic chi coiled and surged around the cauldron. It hung down like silk and swept across like a waterfall. There were many sparkling and translucent specks of light that were dazzling and magnificent to the extreme. They were like rivers of stars. Its might was extremely strong, and its energy was extremely condensed and vast. A single strand could crush a mountain, and a strand could sweep across the continent. Chapter 1656. This cauldron is heaven-defying. No wonder it could block the immortal slaying desk's attack back then. Once the source stone cauldron appeared, everyone could feel how extraordinary it was just by looking at it. Many cultivators of the ruins of immortality became uneasy. At that moment, Jiang Tian hugged the giant cauldron like an overlord lifting a cauldron. He raised the source stone cauldron above his head and smashed it towards the miniature ruins of immortality. At that moment, the void exploded, the sun and moon collapsed, and even the heavens shook violently. Countless formation patterns in the entire ruined capital bloomed with the brightest light, like bright swords of light piercing the heavens. Then the light dimmed, and all kinds of Tao patterns and talisman arrays were destroyed in an instant. With a crash, countless buildings within a few hundred miles of the ruins of immortality collapsed, and were blown into the sky by the wind. The earth shook and the entire place sank a few hundred meters. Boom! An extreme burst of light swept away the night sky and illuminated the entire ruins of immortality. The source stone cauldron and the ruins of immortality truly collided. That loud sound didn't sound like the sound of the mortal world anymore. It was like the final sound of a dying star, the wail of the collapse of the Dyson structure of the universe, and the roar of a supernova explosion. The destructive light tore through the sky and rushed tens of thousands of miles away. It was like a god of creation waving his hand and sweeping away mountains, rivers, and abysses. Even the outer realms were affected, and an asteroid belt was torn apart. After dozens of flicks of the fingers, the flames and waves of energy gradually subsided, and everyone could see the situation clearly. They saw. Jiang Tian stood proudly with the source stone cauldron in one hand. He and the cauldron were unharmed. Meanwhile, Song Ming had already retreated to the wood spirit ancestral mountain. The tip of his spear was trembling and the skin between his thumb and index finger was cracked. Sticky black blood flowed out like oil, and there was blood at the corner of his mouth. Not only had the ruins of immortality, condensed by the laws of immortality, shrunk to half its original size, but it was also full of cracks and collapsed areas. It was full of holes and was unrecognizable, as if a world-ending disaster had occurred. However, as someone who suppressed the Overlord, Dao Sun, and Ruin's Emperor, how could Song Ming only have these tricks up his sleeve? All right. His eyes were cold as they flashed with boundless determination and cruelty. With a low shout, he waved the Overlord's spear in his hand repeatedly, poking and poking. Wherever the tip of the spear passed, it actually left behind streaks of golden light that formed an incomparably dense rune that seemed to be solid and cast from gold. Every single talisman marking was extremely miraculous and profound. Some were powerful like true dragons. Some were unrestrained like heavenly phoenixes. Some were heavy like tortoises. and some were imposing and mighty like Qilins. Iron hooks and silver strokes, majestic and powerful. Every stroke was heaven-shaking. Every word and sentence was divine. Suddenly, in the depths of the void, somewhere unknown, there seemed to be a ghost whispering and a Buddha sighing sound that seemed to be close at hand, but also seemed to be far away on the horizon. At this time many people noticed. Every time Songming waved his spear to write a rune, the ruins of immortality, where the great Tao and the laws of nature converged, became a little smaller. In the end, it almost disappeared without a trace. With the tyrant emperor's golden spear as the brush and the myriad Daros of the ruins of immortality as the ink, I've exhausted them all. What is he doing by writing those mystical runes? At this time, Yun Zhongzi, Niu Duotian, and the other veterans of the Jiang who had solemn expressions. Their brows were tightly furrowed, and their hearts were in their mouths. Logically speaking, the object condensed from the great Tao and the laws of the ruins of immortality should be Songming's final trump card. However, he had destroyed even the great Tao and the laws of the ruins of immortality, which was equivalent to tearing apart his own trump card. What was his purpose? Why do I feel that these runes are very ancient, as if they're summoning some mighty figure? Could it be? Bai Muxia suddenly felt alarmed as she thought of a terrifying possibility, but she also found it unbelievable. What is Patriarch Songming doing? Prince Xiahe asked in confusion. Everyone was puzzled. If I'm not wrong, he's using a kind of soul-summoning technique. Star Lord Tianhe's eyes lit up, and his face was filled with fanaticism as he said word by word. The spirit of the Overlord. What? Those legends are true. The spirit of the Overlord still exists? Everyone was shocked and filled with disbelief. Is it true? Then we're definitely going to win. Prince Xiahe was already full of excitement. Legend had it that the Overlord was not only the Overlord of the human race, and had the blood of the Overlord of the heavens, but he was also a wise ruler. He had pacified a chaotic world, swept away all his enemies in the chaotic apocalypse, established order, and formed a dynasty to solve the problem of the third planet of the South Gate. He persevered until the last moment, but due to the explosion of the third planet, he turned into a rain of light and disappeared in the starry sky. However, he loved this land and his people so much that he refused to die, and his remnant soul continued to wander in the Southgate galaxy. Before the age of Tao damage, which was when the wanderers of the deity land had yet to reach the space city of the Southgate 2 stars, Songming accidentally summoned the remnant soul of the Overlord. With the help of this remnant soul, he was invincible, and was not even afraid of the void-returned sages of the ancient heavenly court. After the establishment of the ruins of Immortality Dynasty, Songming turned this remnant soul into a great Tao and integrated it into the great Tao of the ruins of immortality. This remnant soul had been nourished by the world for tens of thousands of years, and had become extremely powerful. Now that it was summoned, it was terrifying. Boom! A throne descended from the void. This throne was actually weaved from vines, with green leaves and colorful flowers growing on it. It looked very powerful, but it also gave people a feeling of verdure and cuteness. An emperor descended. He wore a Chinese redbud crown on his head, and a green Taoist robe embroidered with all kinds of pictures of plants and trees. He was hunched over and his skin was shriveled. He looked very old, and his hair was white and curly. However, there was a terrifying aura of an emperor that was many times more powerful than that of the previous emperors. His body rumbled as the aura of the Overlord blood of the heavens surged, as if it could crush mountains and rivers. Could this be the terrifying aura of a sage? I heard that the Overlord had reached the Void Return Sage stage, but I didn't expect him to be so powerful. Everyone couldn't help but kneel on the ground. Even the Heavenly River Lord couldn't resist that kind of aura. Spirit of the Overlord, please listen to the prayers of your people and slay the evildoers. Songming chanted an incantation. Although Songming could control the remnant soul of the Overlord and make it listen to his orders, the Overlord was still his ancestor and an emperor, so he still respected him very much. Roar! Die! At this moment, the tyrant emperor's remnant soul changed form. His waist instantly stopped moving like a javelin, and his muscles swelled up. He was incomparably strong and tall, and his aura was unparalleled. His white hair turned black, flying against the wind as he charged towards Jiang Tian. Although he was a remnant soul and didn't have a physical body, he was already a part of the great Tao of the ruins of immortality. He could manipulate the laws in great Tao, and was even more terrifying than Song Ming. Abandoned ant, I don't know why you're fighting. Back then, your ancestors were just abandoned people abandoned by the Shang and Ao emperors. Is it so important to avenge them? Song Ming's silver hair danced in the wind, and his curved fingernails cracked the space. He stared at Jiang Tian with his scarlet eyes full of mockery. It was still a spiritual battle, and he wanted to break Jiang Tian's fighting spirit. Revenge is not important. However, it is very important to make you disappear from this world. Jiang Tian snorted and charged at the Overlord's remnant soul. Is it you? A mere nascent soul cultivator? I can stab you to death with a finger. The Overlord's remnant soul roared with arrogance. His majestic body stood between heaven and earth. It was formed by the laws, but it still showed his glory when he was alive. His body seemed to be made of precious gold, and he was strong and powerful. It was as if he could reach the heavens and intimidate the 9 underworlds. His eyes seemed to have the sun and moon moving, and the galaxy surging. They were extremely deep. He charged at Jiang Tian at a seemingly slow speed. With every step he took, rocks flew and the void trembled. The ground within a radius of tens of thousands of miles was shaking, and all living things were trembling. Even if the countless arrays in the ruins Emperor's palace were activated, they still felt uncomfortable. He possessed the Overlord's blood, and was known as the unparalleled Overlord body. It was true that he was too powerful, and he was talented and bold. He had once dominated an era. At that moment, a remnant soul exuded a monstrous aura, as if a demon god had descended and could suppress all soul formation cultivators. Is that so? You're just a remnant soul. You still haven't given up? Aren't you ashamed that you have brought up despicable and shameless descendants like the teacher and the ruins emperor? Jiang Tian mocked without any mercy. The continuation of civilization is more important than anything else. Survival is also more important than anything else. The great Tao is merciless and it treats all living things like dogs. Before the terrifying power of nature, all living things are but ants. In the face of the apocalypse, they found a place to stay and occupied it. They took advantage of the enemy's weakness and stole their wives and daughters. They rested in their beds in their palaces and enjoyed their treasures. That is the joy of life. The Overlord roared loudly with a hint of madness. He had never felt so happy and satisfied. Chapter 1657. The firework plan, speaking of it, was solemn and tragic, moving people. But in fact it was an expansion plan. Only the tyrant emperor and the others, who knew how difficult it was to survive, understood the importance of expanding and occupying more living space. The tyrant emperor's life could only be summed up in 2 words: expansion. Haha, tyrant emperor, your vision is too limited. Although you know that the great Tao is ruthless, you don't know that man can conquer nature. You don't understand the tenacity of humanity and the power of cultivation. I've seen a Tao reunion perfected immortal who used a planet as a marble and crushed the sun with 1 finger. I've also seen a celestial lord who used a galaxy as a bathtub and a star as a pillow. Jiang Tian said mockingly, if you can reach the Tao reunion level or even the tribulation transcendence, you can easily destroy the 3rd planet of the South Gate. You're just a coward who can't solve your own problems, so you shifted the crisis to a neighboring planet. People call you the tyrant emperor of the heavens and your unparalleled strength. Some say you created the world and were a wise ruler. But in my eyes you're just trash. Not only did he say that, but he also showed the memories of his previous life to everyone. Are you really the reincarnation of a deity from the 9 heavens? The tyrant emperor was dumbfounded and stopped in his tracks. His face was full of disbelief. With his ability, he could tell the difference between the memories and imagination. He knew that these were Jiang Tian's real memories. He had never thought that Jiang Tian would be so powerful. Maybe cooperating with Jiang Tian could really solve the crisis of the ruins of immortality peacefully. Ancestral patriarch, you can't retreat. He's using his mental strength to break your will to fight. Suddenly, Song Ming and Heavenly River Lord communicated with each other. Unfortunately, it's too late. You must die. A trace of regret flashed across the tyrant emperor's face, and he shook his head. Suddenly, his eyes became cruel again, and there was a peerless murderous intent in them. Just looking at his eyes was enough to make people feel as if their brains were about to explode. He sped up and headed toward Jiang Tian. His every move and every word was filled with boundless dominance. He was brimming with an aura of supremacy that looked down on all living things in the world. It made people tremble in fear. "You're just a remnant soul. If he had fought me at his peak, I would have had to be cautious. If I want to kill you now, it will be as easy as cutting grass." Jiang Tian humphed. His gaze was calm, but it was also filled with extreme disdain and indifference. "Ha, ha, I am a pure spiritual body, and I use a wisp of my soul to affect the great Tao of the ruins of immortality. Let's not talk about other things, just in terms of mental strength. In the entire Milky Way, I am absolutely invincible." The tyrannical emperor's divine soul was extremely conceited. "Mental strife? You're still far from it. Kill," Jiang Tian said softly. Suddenly, the golden lake on his forehead rippled, and the soul devourer's divine sense burst out. "No matter how strong you are, can you be stronger than the hell-suppressing devil soul?" Under everyone's shocked gaze, the soul devourer's divine sense gushed out like black jelly. These divine senses were endless, and there were more and more of them. At first, they were like tentacles waving randomly, then like raging waves hitting the shore and rivers flowing across the river. In the end, they formed the body of a demon god as tall as a mountain. They saw it. This divine soul was 100,000 feet tall, wearing a set of dark purple armor. On the armor, there were extremely sharp bone spurs protruding from the roots, emitting a cold light, which made people dizzy just by looking at it. Above its head, between two curved long horns, countless thick thunder dragons swam back and forth. 9 devil heads, snake heads, ghost heads, and dragon heads that were either shrouded in black gas, white bones, or covered in scales crawled out of the coiled muscles on his back. They roared and roared violently and ferociously, dancing in the air like arms, rolling and rolling non-stop, and changing rapidly. Under the contrast of this tall demon god's soul, the overlord's divine soul, which was only 1,000 feet tall, felt like a chicken egg under Mount Tai, unable to withstand a single blow. "Damn it. You said that this person might have a human body, but it's the most terrifying demon body in the universe. Songming, you've misled me." The overlord shouted in panic and turned around to tear open the sky, trying to escape. "It's too late," Jiang Tian said. Under his feet, the hell-suppressing devil soul roared, and the 9 demon heads on its back reached out, reaching into the sky and grabbing the overlord's divine soul. Arg! There was a miserable scream with unwillingness, despair, and deep fear. The overlord's remnant soul didn't even have the strength to resist, and was torn to pieces. At this moment, terrifying soul blood tainted the sky. Large pieces of the body fell like giant rocks and pieces of organs fell like rain. The scene was extremely shocking. "That's the overlord's spirit, but it was killed?" Everyone was dumbfounded and disbelief was written all over their faces. But they didn't know. Soul Devourer was one of the strongest soul energy in the universe. Not to mention that it had been strengthened by Jiang Tian into the hell-suppressing devil soul. It could be said that at this moment, even in the fiend realm, his soul energy was ranked among the top. Not many demons could compete with him. This was also the result of Jiang Tian's seclusion during this period of time to break through to the 3rd level of the nascent soul level. He had killed too many people in the ruins of immortality, and the number of souls he had collected was as vast as the sea. And those cultivators from the ruins of immortality who happened to die were unrepentant, arrogant, and cruel people. Their divine souls were filled with hatred, and these thoughts were the easiest to form the power of the fiend soul. Ever since Niaming Yuan's demon body purified the soul devourer's divine soul, Jiang Tian's soul devourer's power hadn't improved much. Although it wasn't completely compatible with the chaotic divine body, it was still useful. Avenging the ancestors of the ancient heavenly courts isn't important. It doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong. Destroying you is the most important thing. The ruins of immortality dynasty coveted Earth, and that's why you must die. Jiang Tian shouted, and the suppressing hell demon godly soul opened its bloody mouth. In an instant, It devoured the remnant soul of the tyrant emperor. If you dare to look at me and have a trace of covetousness, I'll turn your world upside down and destroy your country. Jiang Tian's eyes were as sharp as knives and his black hair flowed down like a waterfall. He stepped in the air and appeared in front of Song Ming. Jiang Tian ignored his desperate wails and the fragmented ruins of immortality that he hurriedly summoned. Jiang Tian directly slammed his palm down, enveloping the world. Today I'll kill all of you and get rid of all future troubles. With a majestic roar, the giant hand covered the sky and the sun and the chaotic energy lingered around. Song Ming was completely unable to resist this dominating palm strike. He sprawled on the ground like a toad and looked as if he would be crushed at any moment. The gung metal divine palm art Jiang Tian used contained an indestructible energy and was extremely heavy. However, he used chaotic energy and Dharma laws, which were 100 times heavier than before. How terrifying was it? Song Ming's armor cracked under the pressure, and his mask fell off as well, revealing his withered and rotten skin. Fight! Song Ming was extremely angry and unwilling to give up. He was determined to kill Jiang Tian. Through the immortal will of the others, he already knew that the expedition of the ruins of immortality had arrived in the solar system thousands of years ago. The expedition of the ruins of immortality would never coexist peacefully with the solar system. They would exterminate the human race on Earth and turn it into their own habitat. So, Jiang Tian had to die there. Otherwise, Jiang Tian would definitely return to Earth after destroying the ruins of immortality. After all, that was his ancestral land. And with Jiang Tian's strength and personality of seeking revenge for the smallest grievance, he would definitely wipe out the entire expeditionary army, leaving no survivors. By then, the ruins of immortality would have been devoured by the third planet of the South Gate. It would mean that the entire civilization of the ruins of immortality would be destroyed. As he roared furiously, Song Ming's gaze became resolute, and his killing intent moved the heavens and the earth. The Overlord golden spear in his hand stirred up a myriad of laws and grand daos. Every single strike of his was like a torrential river that smashed down, like a mountain that soared through the sky, and possessed boundless strength as he charged once more towards Jiang Tian. Chapter 1658. Bang bang bang. Jiang Tian and ancestral patriarch Song Ming fought at lightning speed. Every time, an earth-shattering explosion occurred. Every attack shook 10,000 miles. The city walls that had existed for a long time were smashed and countless powerful buildings were torn to pieces. The entire ruins of a mortal land had become a ruin. Back off. Back off. Many soul formation cultivators in the city couldn't take it anymore and hid in secret rooms. Many nascent soul cultivators and golden core cultivators were turned into blood mist. They didn't even have a chance to run away. So powerful. That's the power of a peak stage soul formation cultivator. Everyone exclaimed. They felt dizzy and their minds were in a daze. The two of them were showing power that was much more powerful than normal soul formation cultivators. They were almost at the peak of the soul formation cultivator level. In the end, the two of them flew out of the gravitational field and continued to fight tens of thousands of miles away. Even the Tianmong Grotto heaven, which had formed a world of its own, was crushed by the two of them. It was as if a planet had exploded and fell from the sky, shaking the earth and mountains. Kunpeng destruction. Jiang Tian's desire to fight was boiling. His eyes were cold and his killer's intent reached its limit. He took out the absolute heaven sword and slashed horizontally. How terrifying was the Kunpeng divine law and the deity artifact, the heavenly sword. Countless asteroids in outer space were shattered by this sword strike. They turned into resplendent meteors and pierced through the atmosphere. Crack! Song Ming was startled. He raised the Emperor's divine spear and countless beams of light burst out. That was the manifestation of Dharma laws. But it was still not enough. It was cut in half and the cut was as smooth as a mirror. Kong Teichu, if you didn't have the ancient treasure left by Emperor Zhongli, you wouldn't have been able to defeat me. Song Ming was injured and his waist was cut in half. He performed the swordsman art to heal his wounds, but there were still deep wounds and terrifying blood spilled out. Even though the swordsman, heavenly art was the best in the ruins of deity, and he had cultivated it to the peak, it was still difficult to heal. The Dharma laws left by the heavenly sword and the divine law of the Kuan-pung were too strong. The swordsman, art couldn't destroy them at all. Damn it. This is a battle of life and death. Where were the rules? There was no need to talk so much nonsense. Why are you still shooting your mouth off? If you have the guts, throw away the tyrant emperor's golden spear. Jiang Tian was speechless. Had this old fellow slept in the tomb for so long that his brain had rotted? Did they think that this was a fair competition between children? This was war. I don't care what kind of weapon you use, or what kind of magical artifact you use. The highest standard was to kill the other party. Besides, even if you want to be fair, you still used a Dharma treasure. Heaven despairing earth spear. Not only was Tsang Ming at the peak of the soul formation stage, but he was also able to draw upon the laws and great Taos of this world. He could even draw upon the power of an entire planet. Furthermore, he was also a master of the spear. He held half of the spear in one hand and stabbed it repeatedly at Jiang Tian. However, when Patriarch Tsang Ming stabbed out with the spear trembled. Instantly, a sorrowful aura was formed. It was as if there was no longer any light in the world. It was filled with killing, death, loss, grief, and other negative images and emotions. It was vivid and lifelike, and it instantly enveloped Jiang Tian's 5 senses and 6 senses. At this moment, even though the onlookers were watching through the light screen and weren't seeing it with their own eyes, they were still enveloped by this tragic emotion. When he was young, his family was poor. He was so hungry that he had to fight with dogs for food. Tragic. On the path of cultivation, he was an itinerant cultivator. He climbed up with difficulty and was repeatedly bullied. Tragic. He was successful in his studies, but when he saw his white-haired parents pass away with his own eyes, he was still powerless. He was helpless and helpless. Tragic. He fell behind in the competition for the position of sect leader. One of his arms was cut off, and he was ridiculed. Tragic. Today he witnessed hundreds of thousands of cultivators die in the hands of demons. His children, brothers, and lovers were all there. Tragic. A half-step soul formation cultivator was originally hiding in the fortress and watching through the light screen. Suddenly, the emotions of the sorrowful spear of heaven and earth spread out and engulfed him. Instantly, the most painful memories of his life rushed into his mind. It was as if a poisonous snake was gnawing at his soul, causing him to lose control of his Taoist heart. His face and ears turned red, and his eyes were about to burst open. He clenched his fists tightly, and his true essence and precepts surged. He staggered. He wasn't the only one. All the half-step soul formation cultivators and soul formation cultivators felt the same. Their emotions were chaotic, and they almost went crazy. In fact, the higher their cultivation, the more powerful they were, the more severe the emotional backlash would be. Tragic, tragic, tragic. The human world isn't worth it. Immediately, a mid-stage soul formation cultivator couldn't withstand the mental backlash. He roared and self-destructed his spirit, dying an unnatural death in an instant. Because the path of immortality was dangerous and the great Tao was a struggle, the higher a cultivator's cultivation, the more hardships they would experience and the more tragedies they would experience in the human world. The holes in their hearts would become bigger. Even the heavenly river Star Lord didn't feel good. All kinds of tragic and shocking events struck his heart. His face was pale and filled with grief and indignation. We were so far away. Moreover, our Tao hearts were severely affected after being transformed by the Dharma artifact. Kong Taichu was the first to bear the brunt of it. He shouldn't have been able to dodge it. However, he knew how terrifying this attack was. Instead, he was very excited and happy. He had to admit that Patriarch Tsang Ming's spear was indeed powerful. Even with Jiang Tian's strong Tao heart and powerful divine sense, many fantasies appeared in his mind at this moment. For example, the destruction of the Jiang family in his previous life, the tragic deaths of his parents, and the scenes of Qing'er being forced to commit suicide appeared in his mind. It was as if they had happened yesterday. However, Jiang Tian knew that these were the trajectories of his previous life. In this life, apart from the fact that Huang Linger, Tang Linglong, and the other girls developed feelings for him, and that the ghost kick was accidentally killed, everything else that happened was under Jiang Tian's control. Although there were twists and turns in the process, the endings were mostly perfect. Therefore, Jiang Tian's eyes only flashed with a hint of grief. He smiled coldly and changed from defense to offense. He slashed out with his sword. Kurenpeng Divine Law 8th Law Yin-Yang Split. As he slashed out with his sword, the sword light twisted and turned like the dividing line of yin and yang in the Taiji diagram. It was very smooth and beautiful. It looked exceptionally harmonious and beautiful. However, it was extremely fast and peerless. It rushed past like a bolt of lightning, and cut through Patriarch Songming's tragic sorrow like a knife cutting through water. Everyone instantly felt all kinds of sorrowful emotions and tragic avatars disappear from their minds and hearts. They instantly felt relieved. How can your Tao heart be so strong? Songming was shocked and couldn't believe it. Who didn't have regrets in their life? Even the emperors and mighty figures had things they regretted. Who didn't have guilt in their life? Who could have a clear conscience? Who didn't have demons in their hearts? Those so-called gods of slaughter usually had extreme and stubborn thoughts in their hearts. Otherwise, how could they go against the heavens and kill gods? Blood would flow for 1,000 miles and millions of corpses would fall? Remorse, regret, guilt, extreme thoughts and stubbornness and other negative emotions would create loopholes in one's Tao heart. The tragic sorrow spear art was used to awaken those memories, strengthen those negative emotions and interfere with one's Tao heart, eventually triggering demons. He had dominated many planets and suppressed 3 eras. That spear attack had always been successful, and at least 10 soul formation grand cultivators had died under it. But they didn't know. Jiang Tian had lived 2 lives and he had taken revenge for all his enemies. Since he was reborn, he had always been straightforward and carefree. As for killing, Jiang Tian had seen too many civilizations destroyed in his previous life. His Tao heart was like iron and he didn't feel guilty at all when he killed those people. He was completely calm. Go to hell with your questions. Jiang Tian didn't show any mercy. He slashed with the heavenly sword continuously, as if he wanted to kill all living beings and destroy the world. Open the chaos. Crack the sky. Break the galaxy. Every slash from Jiang Tian was accompanied by the Kuenpeng divine law. The air was destroyed and the dimension was cut open. The entire world seemed to be collapsing. Jiang Tian was like an ancient sage who had come back to life with the heavenly sword in his hand. He slashed across the galaxy and cut open the world, creating a future for himself. Even someone as strong as Songming found himself in a difficult situation when facing Jiang Tian, who was showing off his abilities and charging forward courageously, unable to hold on. The Kuenpeng divine law transformed into a Kuenpeng. Then it stretched into an extremely thin and sharp golden line and slashed out. Songming was forced to retreat again and again. The crystallization of the laws of the ruins of immortality that he had summoned was sent flying and shattered time and time again. His armor, which had originated from the primordial era, and had clearly been tempered by the flames of war, and was still incomparably tough, had been slashed into pieces. His physical body forcefully healed time and time again, but it was cut open again and again. Heavy sacred blood dyed the sky red. How can his Dharma laws be so powerful? They're 10 times more terrifying than the sword god from the Big Dipper. Songming yelled in his mind. Chapter 1659. Songming's spear techniques were nothing compared to Jiang Tian's sword techniques. The difference between his laws and Jiang Tian's was like the difference between heaven and earth. They were on completely different levels, just like the difference between a mortal and an immortal. He might be able to master his spear techniques and sword techniques quickly. However, he was also suppressed by Jiang Tian in terms of laws and great Daos. This was unacceptable to him. One had to know that high-level laws and great Daos had to be forged steadily and undergo countless trials and hardships before they could be formed. Songming had experienced the tyrant emperor, Tao loss, and the ruins of immortality. He had lived for tens of thousands of years, and had cultivated diligently and fought endlessly. Although he was only at the soul formation stage, he had already mastered all of the laws and great Daos of the ruins of immortality. Moreover, he had tempered them to become extremely condensed and heavy. He was confident that he could even match a half-step return to Void Stage Cultivator. Therefore, he thought highly of himself, and had never taken the cultivators of the ruins of immortality seriously. In fact, he didn't even take the supreme-grade cultivation techniques of the sword god of the ruins Emperor's palace seriously. However, when he faced Jiang Tian, he felt that his laws were like a piece of paper meeting a steel knife when they met Jiang Tian's laws. They couldn't even withstand a single blow. Under Jiang Tian's suppression, he was like a toddler learning how to walk facing a ferocious and strong man. He was exhausted and kept retreating. Clang. Whoosh. Boom. In the end, Jiang Tian even shot out the 9 divine law flowers. Occasionally, the vermilion bird divine law would erupt and burned Songming's blood and qi to the point that it almost dried up. Just as he tried to resist, Jiang Tian slashed with his sword and slashed out with the sea-calming divine law. Thousands of miles of ice were sealed and frost covered the sky. Songming was completely frozen and motionless like a dead fish in ice. His eyes were stunned and he was at the mercy of Jiang Tian. Even if he used the attainment secret of the 9 great heavenly techniques of the ruins of immortality, he could only pull out a few invisible cracks in the confined space. He couldn't escape at all. Kill. Jiang Tian's face was gloomy and his eyes were cold. He wantonly swung his sword 7 or 8 times in a row, sweeping horizontally and chopping vertically as if he was cutting a fruit. Songming's waist was broken, and his limbs and head flew into the air. His various organs fluttered about chaotically. 1. Songming roared madly and used all his strength to condense a physical body with great difficulty. At this moment, his entire body was covered in cracks that interweaved with each other. His wounds were like the lips of a child, and they were dripping with blood and flesh. His hair was disheveled, and his face was hideous and warped, coupled with the aura of death that coiled around his entire body, causing him to seem like a malicious spirit. At this moment, his heart was already filled with despair. If Kang Taechu were to kill him, then no one in the ruins of immortality would be able to stop him. Kang Taechu would have no problem occupying the ruins of immortality. The key was that he would turn around and attack Earth. The expeditionary army of the ruins of immortality would be wiped out, and the entire civilization would be destroyed. I can die, but Kang Taechu must also die. This was the only thought left in Songming's mind. Self-destructing deity. Songming's eyes flashed with a wild and ferocious light. He was like a ferocious demon god. Suddenly, the broken spear in his hand trembled. It tore through space and moved about. At times, it was like a great rock soaring through the blue sky. At other times, it was like a tiger or a leopard galloping through the forest. It flashed past the numerous phantoms of laws and charged towards Jiang Tian. Kang Taechu, you must die today. Just as he was less than a mile away from Jiang Tian, his eyes became fierce and he was about to self-destruct and perish together with Jiang Tian. Suddenly, he realized that Jiang Tian had disappeared like a ghost. Where is he? Large drops of cold sweat dripped from Songming's forehead with blood. He only felt a chill in his heart. He did not see how Jiang Tian had disappeared. Crystal sand galaxy hanging in the azure sky. Jiang Tian suddenly appeared 100 meters above Songming's head. He waved his hand and thousands of Milky Way crystal sand poured down like a waterfall. Most importantly, it also carried the source stone cauldron with it. Boom. The source stone cauldron was as heavy as a mountain, and it came crashing down. Songming tried to dodge it, but he was already flustered. He felt the pressure and difficulty. What was more terrifying was that the huge mountains formed by the Milky Way crystal sand were flying up and down, crashing down on him from all directions. Even if he used the Overlord Emperor's golden spear, he could only create a few small cracks. He could not break through them and escape. But he did not know. These Milky Way crystal sand were extraordinary. Strictly speaking, each grain had the power of a planet. Although Songming was powerful, he could only control the great Tao of a planet. He could not transcend or destroy it. I can't accept this. Back then, I killed the Ao Emperor with one strike of my spear. Many ancient sages, including many Void Return saints, were also killed by me. How can I be defeated by a junior? Moreover, he is an abandoned person of the wasteland. His bloodline is lowly and he is like an ant. Songming roared and his eyes widened. But he could not change reality. He was hit by the source stone cauldron, and his body was broken in countless places. He almost looked like a bloody gourd. Then, with a loud explosion, the source stone cauldron landed heavily on the ground. The 30,000-foot-tall wood-spirit ancestral mountain exploded, as if it were made of tofu. The entire ruins of immortality trembled, mountains collapsed, rivers stopped flowing, and the entire ruins of immortality was shaken into pieces, completely reduced to ruins. Song Ming was pressed to the ground by the source stone cauldron, and sank more than a mile into the ground. The chaotic energy was violently suppressing and seeping in. However, he was not dead yet. His blood chi was almost exhausted and his body was like a broken cloth. The divine treasures, which were originally like divine palaces, were swaying, and the gods were also suppressed by the chaotic energy and were on the verge of death. He was on the verge of death. Ancestral Patriarch, please stand up. Are you going to let this demon do whatever he wants in the ruins of immortality? Are you going to let him slaughter our citizens and disciples? At this moment, Prince Xiaohe and the others knelt on the ground and shouted loudly as tears of blood rolled down their cheeks. Ancestral Patriarch, you're invincible. Stand up. Even Star Lord Tianhe's eyes were filled with grief and indignation. Song Ming's silver hair was stained with blood and messy. He looked extremely haggard and old. He lay there like a toad on the verge of death. Roar! Heavens! Did the creatures of planet Wood Spirit offend you? Do you really want to kill me? I can't accept this. I can't accept this. Open it. However, when he heard these prayers, Song Ming seemed to have gained endless strength. His entire body trembled, and the corners of his eyes twitched. He panted heavily and suddenly, he gritted his teeth. The god in his body also roared at the sky. His eyes were about to split open, and he let out an earth-shattering roar. His hands and feet were on the ground, and he was like a tortoise trying to lift a giant mountain. He wanted to lift the mother stone cauldron. Jiang Tian didn't even care. He just looked on coldly. The source stone cauldron was only lifted slightly, then it fell heavily again. Poof! Song Ming was pressed to the ground like a toad, and he lay there without any strength left to struggle. His eyes were lifeless as he gasped for breath. The voice of the divine sense was like the chime of the grand Tao, like a great bell, like a mighty gale, and it reverberated in the hearts of every single resident of the ruins of immortality. I can't accept this. At that moment, the ruined city had become a dead city, except for a few places like the ruins Emperor's Palace that still had life. Hundreds of miles of barren land flowed with blood. Every beautiful building in the palace was destroyed in the battle. Countless lives were turned into blood and corpses in the blood transformation matrix. Looking down from the sky, the city no longer existed. It was just a desolate, bloody and terrifying ruin, like the end of the world. You can't accept this? Bear with it. Jiang Tian smiled coldly. He didn't show any mercy, and was about to go after the soul formation overlords. He slashed across the sky and instantly killed a few soul formation overlords in the ruined city. I told you. It's not important to avenge the ancestors of the ancient heavenly court. It's also not important to fight between good and evil. Even without you, it's very important to me. Jiang Tian shouted. Today I'm going to kill all the cultivators in the ruins of deity. Jiang Tian held the blood-stained absolute sky sword, and charged into the ruins Emperor's Palace. The palace was about 10 miles wide. It was like a small world that could contain the shockwaves outside. Although it wasn't big, it was full of colorful lights, flashing lights and Dharma laws. All kinds of true artifact-level treasures were like decorations, and could be found everywhere. There were also countless rare flowers and herbs in the garden. There was no lack of peerless treasure medicines that were thousands or even tens of thousands of years old. It could be said that this was the place with the most spirit chi in the entire ruins of deity. Compared to it, the academy and grotto heavens were like trash. Chapter 1660. Kill. 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 The remaining soul formation cultivators and nascent soul cultivators all fought with Jiang Tian without caring about their own safety. Jiang Tian showed no mercy. He took out the absolute sky sword, which split the sky and illuminated the world. A living fossil with a lifespan of 10,000 years was beheaded by Jiang Tian. The divine treasure was also crushed by the law of sword. Kong Teichu, you killed the innocent. You're inhumane. You'll die a horrible death. Then a tall, curvy and beautiful princess of a dynasty with a nascent soul cultivation level roared loudly. Crystal tears rolled down her pretty face like a pear blossom in the rain. Bang! Jiang Tian was cold and indifferent to the extreme. He didn't even spare her a glance before casually swinging out his palm and directly slapping her into mush, causing sparkling and translucent drops of blood to scatter down like rain. Retribution. I've never been afraid of retribution. I said I'd destroy the ruins of immortality, so I'll destroy the ruins of immortality. Jiang Tian charged in with his sword without any mercy. The tip of the sword slashed across the gold-like floor, creating sparks. He was like a demon or a god. The current him could be said to be terrifying to the extreme, causing people to be terrified and unable to speak. Kong Teichu, you slaughtered my people and killed my ancestors. You're really a supreme demon. Others are afraid of you, but I'm not. Kill. Prince Xiaohe's eyes were bleeding. He gritted his teeth and the muscles on his cheeks trembled. He rushed toward Jiang Tian with a sword. Prince, don't. You're the last symbol of the dynasty. If you die, everything will be over. Go. Grand Chancellor Yanwan pulled him and flew toward Sky Palace. Let's go. It's enough for me to stay here. Sky River Star-Lord also used many laws to cover Xiaohe and cover his retreat. Prince Xiaohe and his people were like stray dogs. They boarded a flying ship and headed for Sky Palace, which was hanging in the sky. That was the last fortress of the dynasty, the last command post. At this moment, the entire ruins of immortality fell into despair and was completely silent. It could be said that no one had expected such an ending. This was unacceptable to them. Prejudice was like a huge mountain in a person's heart that was difficult to remove. In their eyes, Jiang Tian was not even a lowly native descendant of the deity ground. He was the descendant of the abandoned people of Middle Saturn who had been abandoned by the deity ground. In their eyes, Jiang Tian was like an ant. Therefore, no matter how valiant Jiang Tian's battle record was, no matter how amazing his battle prowess was, in their eyes he would lose in the next moment. The cultivators and mortals of the ruins of immortality were very arrogant and had a strong sense of racial superiority. This was not surprising. Back when the wood spirit homeworld was destroyed, and when the deity realm had yet to reach the orbit of Alpha Centauri, they too had suffered from cosmic storms, cosmic calamities, and the destruction of spaceships. Deaths were a common occurrence, and the descendants of the wood spirit homeworld had once doubted themselves, believing that the wood spirit homeworld was cursed, inferior, and should vanish from the face of the world. When the ruins of immortality imperial court was established, and the Southgate 3 stars once again began to expand and move, this thought once again surfaced in his mind. In order to dispel this thought, the ruins of immortality imperial court had always promoted the bloodline of the wood spirit homeworld as the most powerful and excellent race in the universe. That was why they couldn't accept it when Jiang Tian pushed the ruins of immortality. The ruins of immortality imperial court had a vast territory and an everlasting foundation. It had the academy, the sky palace, the ruins emperor's palace, 6 grotto heavens, 36 provinces, and thousands of sects. There were hundreds of soul formation cultivators and countless talents. There were also countless giant cities, arrays, restrictions, and even the terrifying deity-slaying platform and the divine beast array. There were also countless invincible living fossils, the divine emperors of the past, the ancestral patriarchs of the wood spirit homeworld, and even the remnant soul of the tyrant. Any one of these would make people feel that they were unshakable. When all these factors were added up, the country would be forever secure and foolproof. But all of this was torn to pieces in front of Jiang Tian, as if they were made of paper. All of this had been destroyed by an ant from an abandoned planet in the deity ground. It was as if someone had used an egg to smash Mount Tai, or a praying mantis to overturn a chariot. It was too shocking and unbelievable. Kong Teichu, do you know? Those who kill will be killed by others. You've killed too many people. You'll suffer retribution. Suddenly, Song Ming regained his spirit and snorted coldly. I've killed too many people? Where's my retribution? Bring it on. Jiang Tian was disdainful, and he sneered indifferently as he calmly massacred all along the way and killed those fishes that escaped the net. Kong Teichu, do you know why we're fighting to the death? Song Ming suddenly shouted as if he had gone crazy. Because 1,000 years ago, the expedition army of the ruins of immortality, had already gone to Earth on spaceships. Not long ago, they sent back a message saying that they had arrived on Earth. Do you know how many powerful cultivators we sent? It's no exaggeration to say that we're on par with the overlords who stayed in the ruins of immortality. 100 soul formation cultivators. When Jiang Tian heard this, his pupils abruptly constricted, and his heart thumped. He said in a cold voice, "Is that true? Ancestral Patriarch, how could you say that?" As a matter of fact, Star Lord Tianhe almost screamed when he saw Songming tell him the whole plan. However, when he saw Jiang Tian's body tremble slightly, and a hint of confusion and fear appeared in his eyes, Star Lord Heavenly River immediately restrained his aura and remained motionless. He was ready to attack as he carefully stared at Jiang Tian. A mental battle. A loophole. At that moment, Tianhe Star Sovereign finally understood why Songming had said those words. Jiang Taichu's temperament was too ruthless and vicious, and he didn't fear death. It seemed that the collapse of the world, the reversal of the sun and the moon and the extinction of all living things wouldn't affect him at all. He didn't care about retribution at all. However, he was also a human being. He had his weaknesses and emotions. The reason why he had slaughtered so many people was because he loved the ancestral planet, his homeland, and the people there too deeply. The more he killed, the deeper his love. He was too afraid of losing that piece of land, too afraid that the blue planet would be destroyed. His only fear was losing his family and home. Only by saying that would he reveal a loophole in his Tao heart, and have a chance to kill Jiang Tian. Also, what was the point of not saying that? There were quite a few cultivators who knew about this. At least a few thousand. After Jiang Tian took over the ruins of immortality, the truth would come to light sooner or later. If he didn't kill Jiang Tian, there was no way he could hide this. How can it be fake? 2,000 years ago, Divine General Tian Mu led the expedition to the ruins of immortality. Star Lord Tianhe took out a small metal ball. It was a Dharma artifact with images. Immediately, it shone brightly. 2,000 years ago, many cultivators rode on Dharma artifacts to conquer Earth. The images were vividly displayed in front of Jiang Tian. Could it be that I couldn't protect it? With Jiang Tian's insight and experience, he was naturally able to tell that these images were not fake. Instead, they were real history. At that time, many divine emperors saw him off. Some of the cultivators were as powerful as the divine emperors. There were Dharma laws and Tao fragments. Apparently, they were soul formation and nascent soul cultivators. There were too many people. There were dozens of soul formation cultivators and nascent soul cultivators. Besides, they carried countless large Dharma artifacts and true artifacts, which were enough to shatter Earth. Soul formation cultivators. Not to mention soul formation cultivators. Even a nascent soul cultivator can destroy all human beings in 3 days. Jiang Tian smiled sorrowfully, looking incomparably miserable. A deep sense of defeat surged in his heart. After 10,000 years of cultivation, he had accumulated countless experience and returned to Earth. He had gone through countless hardships and tribulations along the way. What was it for? Just to change his fate. Just to be with her for the rest of his life. Just to protect that small home. However, he still couldn't protect it. He could totally imagine it. Qing'er was soft on the outside but tough on the inside. She was never willing to bow down to the cultivators who went to the ruins of immortality. She would even lead them to fight to the death. But even if Qing'er had a deity-grade golden core, she couldn't fight against a nascent soul cultivator. At most, she would be defeated by a half-soul formation cultivator. If dozens or hundreds of soul formation cultivators attacked together, Qing'er would definitely die miserably. And his daughter? When he left, she was still in infancy. Her face was wrinkled, but she had a pair of big black eyes. She could only whimper and didn't even call him dad. Jiang Beibei. And his parents, Sister Ziwei Ling'er, his brothers in arms, the disciples of Tianqing school. They would all die. At this moment, Jiang Tian was in so much pain that he wanted to die. He felt as if his heart had been hollowed out. Now, Songming sent a message with his immortal will. Suddenly, 7 or 8 soul formation overlords tore through the air and silently approached Jiang Tian. Without saying a word, they self-destructed. Clang. The Dharma laws were like a sea of fire, and the Great Tao was like shrapnel. This explosion was like dozens of super-nuclear weapons exploding at the same time. The billowing smoke and dust dispersed. Jiang Tian was covered in blood. He had broken countless bones and even his spirit embryo was cracked. All the phenomena around him disappeared. Jiang Tian didn't move. He lowered his head and opened his mouth. Blood and tears rolled down his cheeks. He chuckled like a fiend god. They won't die. I have my plans. They won't die. Kill. A low shout came out of Jiang Tian's mouth, and an unprecedented cold killing intent rose in his heart. Chapter 1661. Jiang Tian wasn't lying. Before the recovery of spirit qi, he had gathered a group of people like Ghost Emperor Mang Mountain to rebuild the Netherworld and the 6 paths of reincarnation on Earth. In short, if Jiang Tian's people died in battle, Ghost Emperor Mang Mountain would also use their secret techniques to keep the souls of the dead alive, and Jiang Tian would use his divine powers to help them rebuild their bodies. However, Jiang Tian wasn't 100% confident. Firstly, Ghost Emperor Mang Mountain's soul-capturing and ghost-nurturing technique wasn't very good to begin with, and there would always be mistakes. Jiang Tian had taught them some methods to control souls, but when Jiang Tian left Earth, they were still in a state of dissatisfaction. Secondly, the cultivators of the ruins of immortality were too powerful. When they killed someone, they could completely destroy their divine souls. They wouldn't give you a chance to re-enter the reincarnation cycle. If they die, I'll kill everyone in the ruins of immortality. Let's do it. Jiang Tian's thoughts were in a mess, but his face was cold and his eyes were fierce, like an evil dragon that was about to devour people. But at this moment, all the soul formation cultivators were silent. No one dared to move forward. Instead, they all stepped back and formed a formation. Near the Wood Spirit Ancestral Peak, there were a few auras that weren't inferior to Tsang Ming's. But at this moment, they became silent again, like dormant poisonous snakes waiting for an opportunity. Everyone knew that this was the time when Jiang Tian's Taoist heart was unstable, and the loophole was the biggest. Whether it was a sneak attack or a self-detonating god, killing Jiang Tian was the most likely thing to happen. But at the same time, Jiang Tian was also the most murderous at this moment. For a moment, no one moved. The cultivators of the ruins of immortality weren't afraid of death, but the remaining soul formation cultivators were their last bargaining chip. If they killed them, they would be gone. So, even if they died, they had to exhaust Jiang Tian to death. Only then could they rest in peace. Demon Jiang appeared and attacked the ruins' capital. The cultivators of the ruins of immortality were all out to kill Kong Teichu, but there were still some cultivators in Sky Palace to monitor the space and the many planets in the lower world. Monitor my ass. First of all, Kong Teichu is about to attack and destroy our surveillance station. Secondly, the South Gate's 3rd star would erupt in a few decades, or even a few years. Why don't we run away like we did with the fireworks plan? A little Seacone complained out of boredom. Yes. I don't think it's meaningful either. We should rush to the front lines and kill Demon Jiang together with the other cultivators. What are you looking at here? Some cultivators agreed, sipping the jade fire wine and getting drunk. Today, the ruins of immortality was in chaos. It was like the end of the world. Those on the battlefield seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. But other than that, he was completely drunk and wild. No one cared about him when he drank at work. In fact, in the entire Sky Palace, only the department dedicated to monitoring and studying the 3rd planet of the South Gate was functioning normally. The others had already dispersed or entered the battlefield. Although the department monitoring the 3rd planet of the Southern Gate was still operating, it was different from the past. It was very lazy. In the entire ruins of immortality, there was a popular thought that the problem of the 3rd planet of the South Gate could not be solved, and there was no point in continuing to observe. Suddenly, the little Seacone looked at the screen of the artifact and cried out in surprise. He was so scared that he spilled the jade fire wine and said, "Eh? A meteorite? Isn't the distance too long?" Everyone turned their heads. Through the screen they saw, under the dark blue sky, a bright meteor-like light was rapidly flying towards the continent of the ruins of immortality from hundreds of millions of miles away. The primordial chi layer of the continent of the ruins of immortality was about 100,000 miles thick. All meteorites that fell into the primordial chi layer would be burned by the high temperature caused by the friction of the primordial chi. Even a small planet would be destroyed by the primordial chi after flying about 30,000 miles. Moreover, this realm had also set up a spatial barrier. Countless invisible laws interweaved in the air. Not to mention meteorites and stars. Even if it was an invading artifact, it would be identified and killed. The problem was that after this meteor streaked across 50,000 miles, it still did not extinguish. Instead, the light was even brighter, and its speed was even faster. 1/5 of the speed of light. It's completely sublight speed. Could it be an alien invasion? But why is there no fluctuation of the laws? At this moment, the bored cultivators and Saikongs all stood up with shock and disbelief written all over their faces. It was as if they had seen a ghost. The fact that it could glide across 50,000 miles in the primordial chi layer without extinguishing meant that this object was extremely hard. It was not a naturally formed meteorite or meteorite. Moreover, it was so fast that it was very likely to be a Dharma artifact, and a Dharma artifact above the artifact refining level of the ruins of immortality. At this moment, everyone's hearts were in their mouths. Some people wanted to cry but had no tears. Some people were cursing. Someone picked up a communication Dharma artifact and called their superiors. Wasn't the ruins of immortality too full of disasters? Kong Techu, the devil, had turned the ruins of immortality upside down. Wasn't that enough? Why was there such a terrifying Dharma artifact from another world? At this moment, the light screen of the Dharma artifact flashed and a line of golden words appeared. It has been detected that the aircraft is the unsetting sun, the ship of the expedition army of the ruins of immortality. Captain, Divine General Tianmu. What? At this moment, many of the Sky Palace cultivators were frozen in shock. Then they began to laugh and cry. The army of the ruins of immortality expedition to Middle Saturn has returned triumphantly. The unsetting sun has returned to the ruins of immortality. Divine General Tianmu has returned. They hurriedly reported to Prince Xiahe. How is that possible? With their original speed, it would take them 1,000 years to return. Prince Xiahe was also full of disbelief. Your Highness, this sounds unbelievable. However, all signs show that there is no mistake. According to records, the Divine General Tianmu was in charge of the unsetting sun at that time. Now, the starry sky soul tablet he left in Sky Palace has begun to flash and resonate. It proves that his divine soul is on the ship. A nascent soul stage Great Sikong bowed and reported, his face full of flattery. The other great astrologer also had a face full of joy, and said, although it is extremely rare for the speed of navigation to increase, but it is not impossible. I heard that although cultivation is not popular on Middle Saturn, they are not bad at making things like Trojan horses and other things. They call it technology. It is said that it is the same as our refining. I think that the collision of the two civilizations has inspired our refining civilization, so the speed has greatly increased. Humph, the abandoned people of the wasteland are just some tricks. What can they do? Prince Xiahe was relieved. He smiled proudly and said disdainfully, Congratulations, Your Highness. Not to be outdone, the other cultivator flattered. That's not all. After the test, there are 10 soul formation grand cultivators on the unsetting sun alone. There was a deity-level divine transformation realm warrior among them who seemed to be even more powerful than Songming. I think the divine generals on the expedition must have obtained the opportunity on Middle Saturn and reached the limit. Really? Did they really obtain the opportunity to become immortal on Middle Saturn? Previously, the sword god of the ruins Emperor's Palace told me that there is a popular saying in the Big Dipper sector, that Middle Saturn has a great opportunity and great fortune. I didn't believe it at first, but if that's the case, I have no choice but to believe it. Prince Xiahe was shocked again. Your Highness, apart from the unsetting sun, there are also the deep sky eagle, the essence conservation and the Tao transformation in heaven. There are 30 interstellar battleships in total. There are several soul formation grand cultivators on them, and their energy is comparable to that of ancestral patriarch Songming and Lord Heavenly River. They seem to be heading to the ruins capital. A young Seekong staggered as he flew in and shouted in a loud voice. He was pleasantly surprised. "Let's go. Gather all the civil and military officials, and follow me to welcome the victorious soldiers." Prince Xiahe was so excited that his body trembled. "My expedition army has more than 100 soul formation grand cultivators. They have returned and taken control of Earth. I'd like to see how long Kong Teichu can stay tough. No matter how capable he is, how can he challenge my divine generals?" At that moment, Prince Xiahe looked at Chun Fan with disdain and excitement. He was so happy that he almost floated in the air, as if he could already see Jiang Tian kneeling on the ground, trembling and begging for mercy. He was like a stray dog. "Spread the good news. I want the entire ruins of deity to celebrate today. Our expedition fleet has reached sublight speed, and we've only been on Earth for a few years. We're saved." He quickly gave the order as he rode the flying ship towards the ruined capital. He wanted to personally see Jiang Tian's ugly appearance as he begged for mercy and wagged his tail. He wanted to enjoy the tragic scene of Jiang Tian being crushed, his flesh and blood flying everywhere, and his soul being destroyed. Chapter 1662. The expedition army of the Ruins of Immortality has completely occupied Earth. They're back today. Star-level Dharma artifacts have reached sublight speed. Their refining skills have improved. The expedition army has obtained a great opportunity. Their soul formation realm cultivators are far more powerful than the previous divine emperors, sword gods and ancestral patriarchs. There are even deity-grade soul formation realm cultivators. The news spread too fast. Although many giant cities and defense lines had been broken along the way Jiang Tian killed his way here, the Ruins of Immortality was vast. Cities and sects were scattered all over the place, and the communication between them was like a net. Therefore, Jiang Tian didn't destroy the communication system of the entire Ruins of Immortality. Immediately, as the news from Sky Palace spread, the news swept across the entire Ruins of Immortality like a hurricane, setting off a huge wave. "Oh my God, those shooting stars are our expedition ships. Yes, it's so bright. It's so fast. The Ruins of Immortality are saved. We have a new place to live, Earth." Countless mortal cultivators in the Ruins of Immortality were excited. "Let's go. Let's go to the Ruins of Immortality and see the grand occasion." The acting sect master of the Tianji Grotto Heaven was full of joy and said loudly, "Scared? What's there to be scared of about Kong Teichu? Do you know what it means to be a deity-grade soul formation realm cultivator? Kong Teichu will be crushed like a chicken." The acting sect master was only a nascent soul cultivator, because the sect master had already died in the battle of the Xiantian mountain range, and the other nascent soul cultivators had all died in the battle of the Ruins of Immortality. After all, the Ruins of Immortality was about to be destroyed, and he wouldn't be able to stay there for long. The acting sect master of the Grotto Heaven was just to maintain the operation of the deity-slaying array. But he had never thought that he would pick up such a great opportunity. The expedition army of the Ruins of Immortality had returned and turned the tide. The Ruins of Immortality had stabilized a lot, and they could also go to Earth. By then he would still be the sect master of the Tianji Grotto Heaven. That would be amazing. The other acting elders got up happily and rushed to the Ruins of Immortality on their flying swords and flying boats, fearing that they would be late to witness this historic moment. Alas! The dynasty is great and immortal. The plan of 2,000 years have finally come into play. How profound and how wonderful it is. An old man from the Jiang family, the guardian family, stood up proudly. The others were celebrating, hugging each other and crying bitterly. This was not limited to the world of cultivation. At this moment, even the mortals, whether they were tycoons, merchants, beggars or refugees, were all beaming with joy. Billions of people in the Ruins of Immortality knew what those interstellar ships returning from Earth meant. And at that moment, the entire fallen Immortal Sea region was dead silent. Everyone's eyes were filled with sorrow and bitterness. Their hearts were in their throats. For His Majesty Absolute Beginning, this meant that he was bound to lose from the very beginning. Niu Duotian's eyes were hazy with tears. He didn't laugh at him, only deep sympathy. How many heroes of the past and present had been toyed with by fate? They were unable to defeat the heavens, and their ambitions for supremacy had all been for naught. There was no ridicule for Jiang Tian, only deep sorrow. In the ancient times, Emperor Sheng, Emperor Zhongli, and Emperor Ao were all talents who led a powerful cultivation civilization. There were more than 1,000 soul formation grand cultivators among them, but they still lost to the descendants of the wood spirits. Jiang Tian was only one person, and he was leading a group of stragglers. Yet he had to fight against a cultivation dynasty that had existed for 10,000 years and possessed a deep foundation. How difficult was that? It could be said that being able to last until then was already unprecedented. It was a record that the great bandits didn't even dare to think about. However, the Empire of the Ruins of Immortality was too powerful, and had been planning for too long. Not only did they try to open up many worlds along the ancient universe path, and reach Planet East through the portal arrays of the Ruins of Immortality system, they even had battleships in space. Besides, those battleships had already set off 1,000 years ago. Did we still fail? Long Shengnan was full of sorrow. Her body trembled slightly and her heart ached as if it were being cut by a knife. She had been fooled by the foolish policies of the Ruins of Immortality, just like the cultivators in the second-level worlds. She had forgotten history, and was loyal to the Emperor of the Ruins. She used to think that the Emperor of the Ruins was superior, unshakable, and the most honorable and sacred. Protecting the Empire of the Ruins of Immortality was her lifelong wish. However, after knowing Jiang Tian, she saw the truth of history. The dragon-rearing sect was destroyed and her parents and brothers were all killed. Only then did she realize the cruelty of the tyranny of the Empire of the Ruins of Immortality. As a result, she suddenly woke up, following Jiang Tian, attacking the heavens, attacking the Ruins of Immortality. She was full of hatred, and was prepared to die. But she didn't expect such an ending. The Ruins of Immortality was crazier than she had imagined, crazier than the great bandits. They gambled everything and started an expedition to the solar system 1,000 years ago. His Majesty! How could this be? How could we lose? Many great bandits and assassins sighed when they saw Jiang Tian being injured by the self-explosion of the soul formation realm cultivators. Some didn't say a word and just cried silently. Some were already crying out loud. Some gritted their teeth and clenched their fists. It wasn't that they were weak. They were all great bandits. They killed without blinking and their hearts were as hard as steel. Even if their parents and brothers were killed, they might not shed a single tear. But then, tens of thousands of great bandits and countless descendants of the deity land shed tears only for Jiang Tian. What a pity! His Majesty was a rare talent. He was the most stunning overlord in the history of the Ruins of Immortality, including the ancient heavenly courts of the previous dynasty. He definitely had the bearing of a supreme emperor. Whether it was his cultivation arts, his combat power, his awareness or his vision, Jiang Tian had far exceeded everyone's imagination, and reached an unimaginable height. It was as if the universe would be under his control one day. And yet, it ended in such a regretful way. I can't accept this. Tu Fei roared at the sky, shaking the world. He stepped into the air, and went straight to the Ruins of Immortality. His Majesty Taichu was so talented that he was invincible in the Ruins of Immortality, with his nascent soul cultivation. Even the sword god of the Big Dipper star region was killed by him with one strike. Even the master of the academy was no match for him. In his opinion, there was nothing Jiang Tian couldn't do and no enemy he couldn't suppress. But now it had ended like this. It was all in vain. The envoy hero was full of tears. His heart was full of anger, which turned into a desire to destroy. He wanted to rescue Jiang Tian. If he couldn't, he would die together with him. Kill. Bai Muxia cried like a cuckoo, full of infinite sadness and heartache. Her voice was loud and sharp, piercing the clouds and splitting the sky. She stepped into the air and followed Tu Fei. She was already in heart-wrenching pain. On the fallen leaf lake in the Penglai world, she was surrounded by enemies. She was in a desperate situation, and was rescued by Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian taught her the computational canon of supreme molecule and the art of deduction, treating her like a disciple. On the Xiantian mountain range, it was Jiang Tian who turned the tide. She had seen Jiang Tian's peerless demeanor, unparalleled domineering, cold-hearted and ruthless. She had also seen Jiang Tian's gentle smile when he talked about his dream and his hometown with the other senior bandits while intoxicated with alcohol. She had also seen Jiang Tian secretly take out photos of his wife and daughter, gently wiping them and smiling with tears in his eyes. She admired Jiang Tian's strength and majesty, but she also felt sorry for Jiang Tian's miserable battles. Although she respected him like a god, she also felt pity for him, which turned into deep and enduring love in the end. Now, the earth that Jiang Tian was guarding had been lost and his spirit had completely collapsed. He only wanted to die in battle. Now, the expedition army of the ruins of deity had returned and Jiang Tian was about to be surrounded. How could she not be sad? Don't be impulsive. We can't fight to the death. We have to persuade the heavenly Arch. We still have a chance to turn the tables. Niu Duotian wanted to persuade with tears in his eyes. When had the Taichu heavenly Arch, who had dominated the world for thousands of years, ever been so miserable? He had been invincible ever since he entered the ruins of deity, but in the end he was so sad. Jiang Tian's future was limitless. The entire Milky Way, and even the central galaxy would be under his control in the future. However, his rise was too short, and he had taken on too many responsibilities that he shouldn't have. Everyone in the fallen deity sea. Attack the ruins and save the Taichu heavenly Arch. Yin Zhongzi held back his sadness and waved his hand with a serious face. Kill. Children, kill them all. The fallen deity sea has been burned. We can only win this battle, not lose. We can only go forward, not back down. The Green Dragon King's eyes were full of anger, and he gritted his teeth. This was a desperate attempt to find a way out. This was cutting off all means of retreat, and not leaving any way out for himself. Yes. Yes, Ancestral Patriarch. It's our honor to die for the heavenly Arch. Let's follow the Taichu heavenly Arch. Many of the great demons in the sea responded loudly. Their eyes were about to spurt blood as they rubbed their fists and palms with murderous intent. Kill, kill, kill. I'm going to break the ladle in Songming's coffin. Tian Shu threw the big wine jar on the ground and smashed it into pieces. The veins on his forehead bulged as he roared while waving his sword. It could be said that in their hearts, Jiang Tian was a supreme existence, and they revered him greatly. If they were asked to die for Jiang Tian, they would not hesitate in the slightest. Their loyalty to Jiang Tian was no less than the loyalty of the cultivators of the ruins of deity to the dynasty. In an instant, all the crystal warships in the fallen deity sea flew out, and an army of tens of thousands of cultivators moved out. Ships with powerful auras and full of sword marks covered the sky as they streaked across the sky, heading for the ruins' capital. A moment later, the entire fallen deity sea was filled with earth-shattering explosions and waves of thousands of feet high. The soaring flames lit up the sky. The islands were instantly wiped out from the sea, and the underwater palaces were turned into ruins in the blink of an eye. The cultivators of the great bandits stood on the warships like javelins. Their faces were solemn, but their eyes were filled with endless determination. They were ready to die. Their fists clenched the hilts and spears as if they couldn't wait to fight. At this moment, except for the ancestral temple and the ancestral tombs, the only large base that could resist the attack of the ruins of deity for thousands of years was destroyed. They were cutting off all means of retreat. Full speed ahead. But neither Yin Zhongzi nor the Green Dragon King, who had built the base of the fallen deity sea single-handedly, were moved. They just ordered the warships to speed up. The fallen deity sea was certainly important, but it was not worth mentioning compared to rescuing Jiang Tian. As long as Jiang Tian was still alive, there was still hope for a comeback. Chapter 1663. However, the bandits were also worried and uneasy. They also felt a sense of helplessness. The ships returning from the ruins of immortality were too fast as lightning. Some of the crystal ships of the bandits were left behind by the ancient heavenly courts of the previous dynasty, and some were seized from the army of the empire of the ruins of immortality during the battle. Generally speaking, they were all extraordinary military Taoist artifacts, which were far superior to ordinary civilian Taoist artifacts. But at this moment, compared to the returning ships, it was like comparing an ox cart to a bullet train. They could not be compared at all. Could it be that they obtained a great opportunity during the voyage, or after arriving on Earth, that allowed their refining skills to improve rapidly? Could it be that the immortal ascension opportunity on Middle Saturn is not just a rumor? Bai Muxiue and the others had once intercepted some confidential messages from the Empire of the Immortal Ruins, which talked about the immortal opportunity and the possibility of immortal ascension existing on Earth. However, it was only a few words, and the specific details were unknown. Moreover, this saying came from the sword god of the ruins Emperor's palace. In the end, it came from the Big Dipper constellation. There had never been such a legend in the ruins of immortality. Middle Saturn had always been regarded as an abandoned planet. Later, the immortal trap array was activated, and it entered the Age of Doom. In the sky above the ruins of immortality, an energy storm was raging. Blood dyed the world red. Blood smoke rose into the sky like essence chi smoke. Countless broken limbs, Dharma artifacts, and the wreckage of arrays were scattered everywhere. The place was a mess. In the ruins Emperor's palace, there were endless bones, mountains of corpses and seas of blood. Jiang Tian stood there. His eyes were like lightning as he looked up at the approaching crystal warships. His eyes were filled with hatred and fear. Yes, fear. Since Jiang Tian was reborn, he had been fearless. He was not even afraid of gods and Buddhas. But at this moment he was afraid. He was afraid that the cruel reality would come true. Kong Teichu, I wanted to compete with you mentally and break your Tao heart. That's why I told you about the expedition. I didn't expect the expedition to be a success. I'm sure your parents, wife, and children are all dead. They must be very miserable. Kong Teichu, you've killed thousands of people, left millions of corpses, and treated human lives like grass. I thought you were a beast or a demon. But I didn't expect that you would also grow a human heart and feel pain. I really enjoy seeing you in pain. At the side, Song Ming, who was being suppressed by the stone cauldron, had already received the news. He was laughing so hard that his mouth was about to split from ear to ear. He roared loudly and spat out a mouthful of blood with every word he spoke. However, he didn't stop his mouth in the slightest, nor did he show any signs of pain. Instead, he was filled with joy as he madly mocked Jiang Tian. Kong Teichu, release our patriarch Song Ming. I'm afraid that the souls of your parents, wife, and children are all in the hands of our expedition army. Kneel, submit, admit your guilt and repent. Perhaps their souls could be spared from the torture. I can even return it to you and let you reconstruct its body. Prince Xiahe walked forward step by step. His back was straight, and he looked majestic. His eyes were full of disdain, and he was full of supreme majesty. He was like a high and mighty emperor reprimanding his subjects and criminals. Sky River Star looked up at the sky and saw that unsetting sun was getting closer and closer. He couldn't help but chuckle in glory. My grandson Tian Mu is still alive. The soul tablet has already reacted. This crystal ship has been modified. It seems that we've made a great contribution. The disciples next to him nodded and smiled in agreement. This time, the previous emperors of the ruins of immortality, the unparalleled giants, and the masters of the paradises have all been defeated. We're in dire need of people. Tian Mu returned with great contributions. He will definitely be put in an important position. He found a new place for his race to live, turned the tide, and suppressed Kong Teichu. Tian Mu's achievements are unparalleled, and his name will definitely be recorded in history. I'm sure that if Prince Xiahe ascends the throne, he will be put to good use. He can definitely be called an unparalleled giant in the ruins Emperor's Palace, the Academy, or the Sky Palace. Congratulations, Sky River Star. Everyone seemed to think that Jiang Tian didn't dare to resist, and that victory was in their hands. They began to congratulate Sky River Star and Prince Xiahe via telepathic thoughts. The situation took a turn for the worse. The victorious return of the expedition to Earth from the ruins of immortality changed the situation instantly. Jiang Tian, who had been aggressive and attacking crazily, was immediately restrained. The Empire of the Ruins of Immortality, which had been defeated by Jiang Tian and was in dire straits, suddenly had someone to rely on. It seemed that it wouldn't be difficult for them to control Jiang Tian. The biggest difference between a battle in the cultivation world and a battle in the mortal world was that, for a cultivator, The real death was the death of the soul, not the death of the body. Therefore, generally speaking, the opponent's body would be destroyed and their power would be destroyed, but the soul would be restrained instead of being destroyed. It was because the soul could be used to suppress the family and friends of the owner of the soul, and force them to submit in exchange for benefits. If the souls of Jiang Tian's family and friends were suppressed, he wouldn't be able to resist. You want me to submit? Jiang Tian grinned. There seemed to be a bit of madness in his eyes, and the muscles around his mouth twitched nervously. In the entire universe, in the 9 heavens and 10 earths, who can make me, Jiang Taichu, submit? If the soul of my family is in your hands, give it to me and I'll spare you from death. His voice was like a cold gust of wind that blew over from the netherworld, and it was extremely terrifying. Although he was completely defeated, he wasn't weak at all. Instead, he made the cultivators of the ruins of immortality feel a sense of fear. Then, Jiang Tian's eyes gradually calmed down, as if he were hanging high in the sky. There wasn't a hint of emotion in them. Songming, Starlord Tianhe, Prince Xiahe, and the others narrowed their eyes and felt a chill in their hearts. They only saw indifference in Jiang Tian's eyes. Those weren't human eyes at all. There was no warmth in them, as if he were completely calm and rational, looking down at everyone. He didn't even care about the lives of his family members. He flicked his sword and sang, letting out dragon roars. His fighting spirit rose steadily as he shouted, "If you don't give me your divine soul, or if your divine soul has been destroyed, I'll make the entire ruins of immortality, billions of people, and even the descendants of the wood spirit planet in the universe die with my family." How can he be so strong? Everyone was suspicious. Even Songming couldn't believe it. Songming had lived through 3 eras. His lifespan was so long that it was difficult to calculate. He had seen through everything, but he still could not ignore his roots and bloodline. When his race was faced with a calamity of destruction, he could not stay out of it. Instead, he ignited himself and released his final light and heat. He listened to his own funeral song as if he was listening to a war song. He wanted to establish peace for his descendants. Kong Taichu, do you think our ancestral patriarch is scaring you? Sky River Star suddenly realized that Kong Taichu didn't want to submit because he thought the dynasty of the ruins of immortality was tricking him, and he didn't believe it at all. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to withstand such psychological pressure. Thinking of this, he waved his sleeves and stood with his hands behind his back. He said confidently and proudly, "Give up your fantasy. I'm not lying. The one who went on the expedition was my grandson, Divine Lord Tianmu. He was already a soul formation cultivator at that time, not weaker than me. Besides, he's proficient in space travel and many supreme cultivation arts. I don't think the entire Earth can resist him." Jiang Tian only snickered and didn't say anything. Then the unsetting sun finally arrived above the ruins of immortality. The size of this ship was too terrifying. It was like a mountain. No, it was more like a continent. It had a radius of more than 100 miles, and its size was incomparably terrifying. It blocked out the sky and dimmed the stars. It was an ancient bronze battleship with complicated components. There were tens of thousands of cabins with different functions, emitting a bright light. The body of the ship had a metallic texture, and was full of complicated patterns, which were densely distributed and intertwined. There were many Dharma artifact components and some small aircraft attached to it, but they could fly freely. When the unsetting sun was at least 100 miles away from the ruins of immortality, a powerful and vast energy was released, like a raging wave. Chapter 1664. He's so powerful. My soul is trembling as if it's going to crack. That's so terrifying. Is this the power of Divine General Tianmu? My primordial spirit is about to be crushed. Many of the powerful cultivators from the ruins of immortality were shocked, and began to back up as if they were fleeing from a primordial beast. A flying ship was even more terrifying than an entire continent crashing down. It was like the weight of the heavens itself. Many people couldn't withstand the terrifying energy waves coming from the rising sun. With the ruined capital as the center, the earth within tens of thousands of kilometers around it began to tremble, as if the skin of a drum was being beaten. Welcome back, Divine General Tianmu. Divine General Tianmu went to Planet East and returned triumphantly. His achievements are astonishing. At that moment, all the cultivators below the soul formation level knelt and worshipped him. On one hand, they couldn't withstand the energy. On the other hand, they respected him from the bottom of their hearts. Tianmu, godly general, had risked his life to go on an expedition to Earth to find a new home for his race. Naturally, he was a hero in their hearts. Even soul formation grand cultivators couldn't fly and land on the ground. Tianmu is more than twice as powerful as when he left the ruins of deity. At that moment, Star-Lord Tianhe was proud and happy. He's so powerful. Even I feel suffocated. If he has 100 more years, he'll be as powerful as I am at my peak. Even Song Ming felt a chill run down his spine when he sensed that peerless coercion. But he was also happy that the wood spirit civilization had a successor, and the empire of the ruins of deity was going to be revived. Alas, could it be that Senior Tianmu has really found a great opportunity in the central planet? After Prince Xiahe's shock and surprise gradually subsided, jealousy and worry surged in his heart. The empire of the ruins of deity had used up all their trump cards in that battle. All the divine emperors had died and Song Ming was half dead. He wouldn't be able to survive for a few more years. The 9 troops and the noble families were almost wiped out. As for the Heavenly River Starlord's line, just the expeditionary army alone had grown countless times stronger. Perhaps the empire itself was going to be unstable. At that moment, all the cultivators and mortals of the ruins of deity had complicated emotions. They all had their own thoughts and plans. However, everyone turned their eyes to the Rising Sun City. Uhuhu. The Rising Sun battleship exhaled its aura and floated 10 miles above the ruins. It was about the same level as Jiang Tian, Tianhe Star-Lord, and Prince Xiahe. At this moment, the purple bronze ancient warship could be seen more clearly. The gigantic and majestic ship was covered in scars and dents. There were also signs of repairs. Some of the scars seemed to have been left behind by beast claws, but they were at least a few hundred meters long. They were probably the result of encountering a starry sky beast. The entire warship was riddled with scars, giving off an ancient vibe. Clearly, it had survived countless battles. At this moment, the terrifying fluctuations became even more intense. It was as if a primordial ferocious beast was awakening, and the entire world was about to collapse. The thousands of cultivators around the ruined capital, including the soul formation overlords, were all shocked. The power was too terrifying. At this moment, they felt their soul cores were on the verge of splitting apart, and it felt as if blades were scraping their bones. It felt as if every single strand of their muscles were about to be peeled off while every single inch of their bones were about to break apart. Even the nascent souls of gods would be destroyed. Although it wasn't pleasant, their hearts were filled with joy and relief. The stronger the heavenly shepherd general was, the more miserable Kong Teichu's death would be. Dong. A dull sound was heard. The unsetting sun, which was even larger than a mountain range, shook and fell like rain. The cabin door opened and a gust of wind blew out. Every gust of wind was black and cut through the void. At this moment, a murderous aura rippled between heaven and earth. It was as if there was a billowing smell of blood gushing out of the cabin. It was extremely terrifying. It also felt as if the gates of hell had opened, and a supreme demon was about to descend upon this world. It could destroy cities and countries, destroy worlds and planets. Billowing murderous aura swept out like a hurricane, filling the void. Bang! A foot stepped out. A pair of purple bronze boots wrapped around the sole of the foot. Black light surrounded the foot, and the murderous aura was extremely terrifying. The pressure was so terrifying that even Song Ming was a little breathless. Perhaps he could have stopped it when he was at his peak, but after all, he had already used up half of his life in the battle with Jiang Tian. Everyone's hearts trembled. Under everyone's gazes, this powerful being finally walked out. He was wearing a purple bronze battlesuit. He was tall and majestic, and he was extremely domineering. The purple bronze battlesuit was engraved with the pattern of the sun's fire. The helmet was also decorated with the sun. It was very exquisite and luxurious. However, he was surrounded by a kind of death aura. His face was pale as if he was a corpse that had been dead for countless days. There was no distinction between the pupils in his eyes. Instead, They were a demonic pitch-black color that was extremely deep. It was as if one's divine soul would fall into it and be unable to extricate itself. Its heavenly shepherd. Seeing the face that he hadn't seen in 1,000 years, Tianhe Star was filled with joy and tears. At this moment, dozens of divine generals walked out with Heavenly Shepherd General. Each of them had reached the limit and was far more powerful than ordinary soul formation cultivators. Although they couldn't compare to Tsongming at his peak, they were at least comparable to the previous divine emperors, Headmaster Yusheng, and the sword god of the ruins Emperor's Palace. Oh my god! There are so many divine generals and each of them is so powerful. The ruins of immortality is in peace. Do you think Kong Taichu can still be so arrogant? Haha, I'm afraid he'll be scared to kneel down and surrender. Many cultivators were shocked. They discussed animatedly and rubbed their palms in excitement. Some even scolded Jiang Tian and asked Jiang Tian to kneel down. However, Jiang Tian's face changed slightly, and a smile appeared on his face. His eyes softened and his will to fight disappeared without a trace. Ha, this kid knows that he's about to die. He can't be tough anymore. He must have been scared out of his wits by Heavenly Shepherd General. I didn't expect him to have such a day. Seeing this, everyone mocked him and said harshly. Even Prince Xiahe couldn't sit still when he saw Tian Mu. He stepped forward and greeted him with a smile. He said loudly, Tian Mu, you've returned victorious from your expedition to Earth. I'm very happy and gratified. You've made a name for yourself in history. Suddenly, his expression turned cold as he looked at Jiang Tian, and he said in a cold voice, however, I'll let you know that the ruins of immortality is in chaos. This Jiang Taichu is the villain that defied the heavens and came up from Earth. And he brought disaster to my country. You've been traveling for a long time. I should let you rest for a while. But this is urgent. I order you to kill this bastard immediately. Jiang Tian was still smiling faintly. The moment Heavenly Shepherd General walked out, Songming suddenly became quiet. He scanned Heavenly Shepherd with his immortal will, and didn't miss a single detail. Suddenly, his face changed and he shouted crazily, "Run, silly children!" His voice was sharp and practically carried a sobbing tone, and it contained boundless terror and despair. What? Ancestral Patriarch, why should I run? Everyone's face changed. However, Prince Xiahe still didn't understand. He smiled a little unnaturally, but he didn't leave. Run. Songming finally realized what was going on. Heavenly Shepherd and the other divine generals didn't return victorious. They had been sent there as captives. They had been refined into puppets and their divine souls were controlled. This meant that the expedition to Earth 1,000 years ago had failed completely and all of them had been wiped out. The spark of civilization on the Wood Spirit Star might have been extinguished before it even reached Earth. The ruins of immortality were all that was left of planet Wood Spirit. At this moment, from the perspective of preserving the future generations of the civilization, it was meaningless to fight Jiang Tian to the death. They could only run away at all costs to preserve their bloodline and their roots. However, before Tsongming could say anything, I'm a corpse general under Kong Taichu and Zhao Xueqing. I'm here to protect Earth. Anyone who insults my master must be killed. Anyone who insults our planet must be killed. Hundreds of divine generals, including Tian Mu Divine General, yelled at the same time. They drew their swords and turned into streaks of black light that tore through the air and charged forward. What? How is this possible? They've become Kong Taichu's corpse generals. They've never even seen Kong Taichu. Who's Zhao Xueqing? Ancestral Patriarch, I'm your grandson. Prince Xiahe, Lord Tianhe and the Soul Formation cultivators were all dumbfounded when they saw the divine generals charging at them with swords. Shock, astonishment, fear, confusion, helplessness, panic. The expressions of the cultivators of the ruins of immortality couldn't be more interesting. Swish. That was a tragic scene. A one-sided massacre had begun. A divinity transformation stage Grand Cultivator was slashed in half by a corpse general. Blood dyed the sky red, and hot internal organs flew everywhere. Even the white stubble of the bones was exposed. Clap. He was a divine transformation realm cultivator, who could be considered a living fossil. He was once an extremely powerful minister, and served 3 generations of divine emperors. He was majestic and awe-inspiring, but he was still smashed into pieces by a corpse general with a single slap. Blood splattered everywhere, and his flesh and bones scattered in all directions like a beautiful flower blooming in the air. Even his divine treasures collapsed, and the god was destroyed. That was simply a one-sided massacre. The corpse generals were ruthless. They were like tigers, wolves and a flock of sheep, crushing everything. They were already stronger than the semi-god realm cultivators in the ruins of immortality. They had gone through inhuman evolution, and had their souls controlled. They didn't feel any pain or fear at all. They only had one goal, which was to kill the enemy. They fought without any regard for their lives. Arg! Why do you want to kill me? Screams were heard all over the sky, which was extremely horrifying and tragic. Soul formation grand cultivators died one after another. Their blood dyed the sky red and their organs and broken bones were flying everywhere. There were explosions like super-nuclear explosions, lighting up the sky. Countless bodies of the nascent soul and golden core cultivators fell to the ground like raindrops. That was an encirclement battle. It was extremely fast, and the battle had come to an end in 10 seconds. Chapter 1665. I'm the Crown Prince. I'm Prince Xiahe, the Commander-in-Chief of the war in the ruins of immortality. I order you to stop. Prince Xiahe cried out in alarm when he saw a divine general mummy charging over, and killing all the guards. He retreated in panic like a stray dog. However, it was useless. The corpse general's face didn't change at all, as if he were a statue. His black eyes didn't show any white, nor did they show any emotion. As the saber slashed down, the saber dowlaws scattered and shot out in all directions. Swish! Prince Xiahe was cut into hundreds of pieces, and turned into a rain of flesh. His nascent soul, which was only 3 inches long, was slapped into pieces by the corpse general when it ran only 1 meter. Even its soul was obliterated. How can you forget that you're an elite of the dynasty and a loyal general that the Emperor of the Ruins of Immortality values? Tianmu, remember that your name is Tianmu. You're a member of the Sky River family, and the first Starfleet captain after Sky Palace was established. Seeing that, Sky River Star Lord's eyes turned red. He was shocked and furious. He pointed at Tianmu and shouted, Tianmu, is my name Tianmu? Tianmu was killing crazily, but he didn't show any emotion. He was like a killing machine, ruthless, precise and ruthless. He used the least amount of Dharma power, and paid the smallest price to kill his target in the most painful way. However, when he heard that name, he trembled and froze. Holding the blood-stained long sword, he lowered his head and said, Is that my name? Tianmu? He seemed to have recalled something. Tears rolled down his cheeks with streaks of blood, but he smiled miserably and murmured, I remember now. I once went on an expedition to Middle Saturn with honor, trust, and hoped to find a place for my people to live. He started to tremble as if he was struck by a great fear. I thought that even though it was a planet of life, it had been abandoned, without any orthodoxy or power. I thought it would be easy for me to take it down. I could make a name for myself and become a marquis. He even seemed to have recovered. There were more whites in his eyes and his voice was still trembling. I didn't expect Earth to be so different from before. Our expedition army was ambushed by a deity-grade soul formation cultivator. That's terrifying. We were humiliated and captured. But Star-Lord Tianhe was not interested in listening. He impatiently shouted, Tianmu, you unfilial son. Quickly order your subordinates to stop the slaughter. You killed your own king. You can't be forgiven. The white in Tianmu Divine General's eyes suddenly disappeared, turning completely black. He slashed with his blade. I am the number 1 corpse general under Kong Teichu. I will not be humiliated. Qila. Sparkling divine blood dyed the sky red. Tianmu godly general was too strong. Heavenly River Star King couldn't resist at all, and was cut to pieces. Even his divine treasure was destroyed and disappeared from the world. At this point, with the fall of the Heavenly River Star Lord, one of the 3 giants of the ruins of immortality, was none other than Mo Li. From the beginning to the end, Jiang Tian was calm, like an ancient well without ripples, watching coldly. It seemed that everything was within his expectations, as if he had the pearl of wisdom in his hand. At this moment, a smile gradually appeared on his face. He looked at the rising sun city and said softly, "Little girl, I really didn't expect you to. What are you waiting for? Do you want me to beg you to come out? I've become ugly. I'm afraid you'll dislike me, so I don't dare to go out immediately. Let me use my creation divine power." A soft and pleasant voice rang out. It sounded like the chirping of an oriole. It was playful and carried a hint of tenderness and sweetness. "Silly girl, even if you become an old woman, you're the most beautiful in my eyes." Jiang Tian helplessly shook his head. They were an old couple. Why did they have to talk so much? "Well, Jiang Tian, you're capable, aren't you? You've taken in a few beautiful female disciples and swept through the ruins of immortality. Now that you have status and identity, you don't put your wife in your heart and curse me to become an old woman?" Zhao Xueqing's voice was sweet and coquettish. "Hey, why do you only listen to unpleasant words? You're good at finding fault. Didn't you hear the second half of the sentence?" Jiang Tian helplessly said. See if I don't clean you up." With a soft snort, under Jiang Tian's infinitely expectant gaze, a woman wearing a purple crystal armor and a phoenix feather golden crown, carrying a long knife, walked out with a confident and steady pace. The girl's shoulder-length black hair was tied with a headband woven from the skin of a flood dragon, and inlaid with a soul-setting stone to bind her hair. She had a delicate and pretty little face with exquisite facial features, as if all the spiritual energy in the world had gathered here. Her skin was more delicate than a girl's, but with a maturity, grace, and confidence. That confidence must have been cultivated by going through storms and being in a high position. Her beautiful eyes were as bright and clear as gems, containing gentleness, kindness, and compassion, but also incomparably firm and resolute. She had been through a lot, but her heart hadn't changed. There was a sweet smile at the corner of her plump lips. That smile was affectionate, sentimental, and also doting, as if she were a big sister doting on her little brother. Facing Jiang Tian, there was only one person in the world who could show such a smile in the world: Zhao Xueqing. At this moment, the cultivators and mortals in the ruins of immortality all exclaimed in their hearts when they saw that smile and that smiling woman. How could there be such a beautiful smile and such a stunning woman in this world? She was like a goddess, eternally indestructible, invincible and fearless, a goddess raised by heaven and earth. Any woman would feel a sense of inferiority the moment they saw her. Even though Fairy Jade Lotus by Muxue Long Shengnan and the other girls were all famous in this world, when compared to her, it was like a chicken meeting a phoenix or a wildflower meeting a peony by the roadside. They paled in comparison and lost their splendor. She's a soul formation cultivator, and she's of an extremely high grade, far surpassing the sword god of the ruins Emperor's palace. Any cultivator, even Song Ming, would feel a sense of fear when they saw her, and all their fighting spirit would disappear. The fierce battle continued. Jiang Tian and Zhao Xueqing walked towards each other, as if there was no one else around. There was only each other in their eyes, as if the battle was close at hand. Even the entire vast ruins of immortality and the dazzling universe suddenly disappeared. There was no other person in the world, only each other. Gods exploded one after another, letting out an earth-shattering boom, as if they were setting off fireworks for the reunion of the husband and wife. Under the dim starry sky, beams of destructive light lit up. Those were the flames of golden cores being crushed and exploded, as if they were setting off fireworks for their reunion. "Hubby, you've worked hard." Zhao Xueqing walked to Jiang Tian and looked up at him. She smiled, but she could not hold back her tears. They rolled down her jade-white cheeks. There was a scar on the left side of her forehead. It was the size of a crescent moon. It was probably left during the battle, but there were fragments of the great path of the soul formation cultivators left behind. Her magic power circulated endlessly, so the wound could not heal. "The world is peaceful. You and the child are safe. It's worth it." Jiang Tian stretched his arms and hugged the girl's soft body. He closed his eyes slightly, feeling extremely tired and wanting to sleep. The girl's fresh and natural scent reached his nose. It was like lavender and daisies. It was so familiar that Jiang Tian had been dreaming about it for years. "The battle is over. If you want to sleep, then sleep for a while." Zhao Xueqing patted Jiang Tian's shoulder gently, like a sister taking care of a tired brother. In fact, she was a few years younger than Jiang Tian. At this moment, interstellar flying shuttles and spaceships soared into the sky like fireworks, leaving colorful trails in the sky that was already pale blue and faintly illuminated by the sunlight. Those were the exhaust flames left by the crystal reactor. The great defeat began. Nobody resisted. Nobody wanted to kill Jiang Tian anymore. They could only run. In less than half an hour, the great changes in the sky above the ruins of immortality had spread across the entire ruins of immortality. The crystal warships that were prepared to fight Jiang Tian to the death all changed their coordinates and sailed toward the depths of the universe. At that moment, in the launch bases of the heavenly palace all over the ruins of immortality, thousands of ships set off and hundreds of barges raced toward the depths of the universe. Many spaceships were not equipped for interstellar travel at all. They did not have enough crystal energy, and their reactor was too low-end. This meant that after they ran out of energy, they could only rely on inertia to move toward their target at a constant and relatively slow speed. The time it would take to reach their target could be tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, or even millions of years. If the god of luck did not come, they were bound to die in the desolate universe when they were still a long distance away from their target. But they had no choice, and they did not hesitate in the slightest. Overlord of the Wood Spirit Civilization, Emperor of the Absolute Sky Ruins, please bless your descendants for a smooth voyage. No space storms, no space beasts, and safe arrival at their new home. A captain knelt on the ground, his forehead touching the ground, his arms stretched out, his eyes filled with tears as he prayed loudly. Our homeland is just the last stop of our ancestors' wanderings. Today, we will continue to wander in the footsteps of our ancestors. Perhaps, wandering is the destiny of us descendants of the wood spirits. A cultivator kissed the land of the ruins of immortality, then stood up resolutely and walked into the spaceship. Kong Techu, you devil. We will take revenge for today's grudge in the future. We will take back the ruins of immortality and invade your ancestral planet, Earth. We will kill everyone and leave no one alive. Kong Techu, you are bloodthirsty and unscrupulous. You will be punished by the heavens in the future. There were also cultivators who gritted their teeth and cursed and swore with bloodshot eyes. Father, mother, I can't take you away, but don't worry, we will avenge you. A debt of blood must be paid with blood. There were even cultivators who were moved and wailed. Song Ming smiled as he watched the spaceships take off. Then his expression suddenly changed. He knelt on the ground like an old dog and kept kowtowing. He begged with tears in his eyes. Tai Chu Emperor, we are convinced, completely convinced. I, Song Ming, am willing to lead all the people of the ruins of immortality to be slaves and servants to Tai Chu Emperor. We will be loyal to Tai Chu Emperor for generations to come. We will never betray him. Chapter 1666. Shut up. You're so annoying. Jiang Tian frowned. This old dog dared to disturb him while he was being intimate with his wife. Mistress, you're kind and magnanimous. The dynasty is guilty, but the common people are innocent. As long as you can leave some roots for the wood spirit civilization, we're all willing to commit suicide to atone for our sins. Song Ming begged with tears in his eyes. This person was really ruthless. As long as they could protect the roots of the ruins of immortality, they were willing to give up the entire ruins of immortality. They didn't even want to occupy the level 2 and level 3 worlds below the ruins of immortality. We'll talk about whether to kill the people of the ruins of immortality. We still need to listen to my husband's opinion. But none of these cultivators who want to escape to the outer realm can be left alive. Zhao Xueqing chuckled. Many space battleships chased after them and attacked with their Dharma artifacts. Streaks of dazzling flames lit up the sky. In an instant, the launch sites of Sky Palace were engulfed in a sea of fire. The space battleships of Sky Palace that hadn't broken through the space barrier and left the gravitational field of the ruins of immortality were all turned into iron rain. No, at this moment, Song Ming's heart was filled with grief. The spaceships like Rising Sun and Essence Conservator had obviously been modified. They were 10 times or 100 times faster than before. The Dharma artifacts they were equipped with were also extremely powerful. They were far more powerful than the spaceships of Sky Palace. Under the attack, none of the spaceships of Sky Palace escaped. They were all destroyed. As for the cultivators on them, they also fell like rain. None of them escaped. They were all blown to ashes. After a while, Jiang Tian held Zhao Xueqing's hand and looked at Song Ming coldly. He said, "Song Ming, you probably think that Earth is an abandoned planet that has entered the age of chaos. We're poor and weak and can't withstand a single blow. Actually, that's not the case. A few years ago, I've already revived Earth Spirit Qi and spread the cultivation methods to establish a foundation for the future. You're just digging your own grave by invading. You're just throwing eggs at a rock." Jiang Tian had just communicated with Zhao Xueqing with his mind. He already knew everything that had happened after he left Earth. The recovery of spiritual power was not something that happened overnight. Instead, it could last for years or even decades. During this period of time, the spirit qi contained within planet destruction was constantly gushing out and being released. Earth's volume was constantly expanding, and all sorts of mountain ranges rose and rose. The Earth expanded and new mountain ranges, lakes and oceans were even born. In the first year after Jiang Tian left, the entire Earth had expanded to 10 times its original size. The geological changes were intense, and the weather was chaotic. This was the first great change since ancient times. Earthquakes and tsunamis erupted almost every day. However, human abilities were rapidly evolving. Ordinary people were as strong as a mountain, and could leap as if they were flying. In an instant, they could soar 10 meters into the air. Therefore, their ability to deal with disasters increased rapidly, and there were not many casualties. Even if some people were injured in the disaster, as long as they didn't die, they would be nourished by the spirit spring and recover quickly, even becoming stronger. In addition, there were also some ancient ruins which contained great fortune and mysterious inheritances. Many cultivators on Earth boldly ventured into these ruins to explore. They obtained many benefits and improved rapidly. Some of the secret realms hidden in the dimensional space appeared. Some were sects, some were aristocratic families. They all opened their doors and accepted new disciples. The overlords of the secret realms would also descend to the mortal world and conduct exchanges in all aspects. In addition, Tianqing School had announced a lot of cultivation arts. Cultivation was flourishing and cultivators were popping up like bamboo shoots after a rain. Within a year, nascent soul cultivators had appeared. As for golden core cultivators, there were countless of them. As for Zhao Xueqing, because she had inherited more than half of the spirit qi of planet destruction in her body, her stainless phoenix deity body had been fully activated and the cultivation arts taught by Jiang Tian. Her power had increased rapidly. Within a year, she had broken through 2 major barriers, the golden core level and the nascent soul level, and stepped into the first level of the soul formation level. Human technology also made rapid progress. After learning about the existence of the cultivation civilization, the existence of the dimensional world, and the threat of the ruins of deities, human technology unleashed unprecedented potential and reached the limit. Of course, this was also because the humans and monsters on Earth kept evolving and increasing their strength, which made the governments of various countries and large multinational giants worried that the world order would be disrupted and the political, economic and military systems would collapse, so they crazily increased their investment in technology. In any case, the Great Pressure gave the human civilization a new lease of life. The Mars Space City was successfully built back then and military stations, fortresses and observation points were built on all the planets in the solar system. After that, technologies such as controllable nuclear fusion technology, space curvature engines, memory transplants and sublight speed spacecraft were also developed in 2 years. In short, with the promotion of various factors, humans on Earth had entered a new civilization form that focused on both cultivation and technology. Several dimensional worlds in the solar system, such as Tianqing, Qie and Kanglin, also surrendered to Jiang Tian and joined the Myth Alliance. They also removed the dimensional seal and entered the space of the same dimension, revealing a planet with life. In the end, they formed a barrier to protect Earth against possible invasions from other planets. About 2 years ago, The Myth Alliance detected that Tianmu led hundreds of spaceships into the solar system and landed on Mars. Keynes did not dare to delay and immediately reported the situation to Zhao Xueqing. Zhao Xueqing led many students of Tianqing School and members of the Myth Alliance to stop Tianmu and the others on Mars. After a fierce battle and paying a huge price, they finally annihilated and captured all the invaders. When Jiang Tian left Earth, he left a soul-swallowing seed for Zhao Xueqing and taught her how to refine it. 2 years ago, Zhao Xueqing was already as powerful as Jiang Tian, and the soul-swallowing seed was also very powerful. At least, she had no problem controlling Tianmu and the others. So she used the soul-swallowing seed to refine Tianmu and the others into her own corpse generals. After learning about the crisis in the ruins of immortality from Tianmu, Zhao Xueqing was very worried about Jiang Tian's safety. After all, when Jiang Tian left Earth, he was only a golden core cultivator, and there were hundreds of soul formation cultivators in the ruins of immortality alone. There were also countless nascent soul cultivators and golden core cultivators. Besides, there were dozens of inferior worlds in the ruins of immortality, and each of them had a heavenly sect family. If Jiang Tian went in alone with only a few nascent soul cultivators such as True Dragon and Old Monster Mingi, it would be like an ant trying to shake a tree. How could Zhao Xueqing rest assured? She was determined to help Jiang Tian, so she took Tianmu and the other corpse generals to the Red Field world on the Unsetting Sun and other ships. She contacted Ding Lai, Ding Lingdang, and the others and teleported her, the warships, and the corpse generals to the Dragon Gate world through the spatial teleportation formation. They sailed directly from the Dragon Gate to the ruins of immortality, without using the dimensional teleport arrays. Even though using the dimensional teleport arrays was fast, there were also many disadvantages. The landing place was fixed, and they were basically waiting to be killed. The spaceships like the Rising Sun had been modified by Zhang Qinzhen, the king of artifact refining. Their performance had been improved 100 times. There were a few hundred astronomical units between the Dragon Gate and the ruins of immortality, which was like crossing several solar systems. However, they arrived in only a few hours with the Rising Sun. Kong Teichu, please give us a way out. Don't kill the descendants of the wood spirits and their race. Zhu Tian, the first emperor of the ruins of immortality, left 1,000 years ago and arrived at the central galaxy. I'm afraid he'll get great inheritances and opportunities. If he returns and sees your majesty treating his people well, he'll be very grateful. Song Ming begged like an old dog wagging its tail. His silver hair trembled slightly, as if his vitality had been sucked away. He used to be a peerless genius and was famous in 3 eras. Naturally, he was arrogant and looked down on everyone. But then, he gave up all his dignity and begged for mercy for the sake of his descendants. Are you threatening me? Jiang Tian's eyes turned cold. Ancestral patriarch Songming seemed to be begging, but he had actually revealed an important piece of information to Jiang Tian. The first emperor of the ruins of immortality, Zhu Tian, was no longer in this world. He had gone to the central galaxy. It was very likely that they would make a comeback and exact bloody revenge. And yet, Jiang Tian wasn't afraid at all. Judging by the level of spirit qi in this world, it was impossible to nurture a void-returning saint. The old ruins emperor, Zhu Tian, should only be a soul formation cultivator. Besides, he had lived for 10,000 years. Considering the power of a soul formation cultivator, he should have been buried up to his neck. If he wasn't at his peak, why would Jiang Tian be afraid of him? Furthermore, as long as he arrived at the central galaxy, that would be his home ground. There was practically nothing that he did not know. And there was nothing that he did not know. Just like how a fish could swim freely in the vast sea, and a bird could fly freely in the vast sky, he would have the home ground advantage. That's not what I meant. I'm just analyzing the pros and cons for your majesty. Songming quickly said. You have no right to comment on how I deal with the descendants of the wood spirit planet. Those grudges and grievances will naturally be settled with all of you. Jiang Tian waved his hand. With a snap, the law of chaos turned into a finger aura and shot into the sky. Kong Teichu, don't make a mistake. After Songming made his last threat, Jiang Tian's chaotic finger aura had already pierced through his divine treasures, divine treasures, and even his divine soul. Song Ming, the divine general who had been the master of the old ruins emperor for 3 generations, had died just like that. At that moment, the entire ruins of immortality went silent. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.